Broadcasting Network. I am your host, Josh Reeves. 20 minutes late to the broadcast today as we had no internet connection up until just a few minutes ago, but we are back up and running here. I tell you what, I felt like I was having one of those, you know, where they show like in the war in Iraq and they go and they like, you know, anytime there's a standoff, they like cut off their water and they cut off their communication. I was waiting for like the for them to start blasting like, you know, New Kids on the Block with big speakers or something outside of my, come out, we know you're in there, come out, Mr. Reeves or something. I didn't know what the hell was going on because our water was like not working and like there was no electricity. And then all this, I mean, there's no internet, no water. Then all of a sudden everything started working. So don't ask me, man. I just work here. So we're here and we are live and we hope that you guys are thank you so much for being patient with us. And we'll hope to let everybody know that we're here. I guess that what we'll try to do is we'll try to have some semblance of a show because I had no internet connection to do any sort of show prep today. So I have very little prepared. I have a few stories already. So what I'll have to do is I'll go through some various stories and then I'll just have to do news gathering between the breaks. So this is going to be a fly by the seat of your pants 4-hour broadcast today. There's no telling what we'll talk about, where we'll go, or anything else. So stay tuned here today, ladies and gentlemen, because I think it's going to be an exciting show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We do have wide open phone lines for you today at 360-350-1486. And last night, those of you that listen late nights may have listened to another one of Michael Vale last night, the Intel Strike Report, and they had some technical issues last night with I don't know, it was just weird stuff happening. Not really on our end. It was just some strange things that happened. Hard to say what it was. I at first had thought it had something to do with that because it was completely unrelated. But that is how it goes, I guess, and nothing ever runs 100%. All of the time. But let's get into some news right now in this segment of the show. China calls for financial New World Order. From Reuters, China paper urges new currency order after financial tsunami. From Reuters, threatened by a financial tsunami. The world must consider building a financial order no longer independent and dependent on the United States, a leading Chinese state newspaper said on Wednesday. The commentary, but this is from last week. So why the hell would someone post this as new? I'm sorry. This came out last week. Jeez Louise. See, this is what I get. This is what happens. You see? I go try to do news gathering, and freaking some of these, and this has always happened, some of these websites, and I'm talking about mainstream news websites, will post stories on their front page that are like a week old. I mean, it's just completely ridiculous. But, of course, if we try doing that in the alternative media movement, we'd be raked over the coals, and we'd probably be called COINTELPRO for posting an article that was a week old. It's just gotten ridiculous. Yeah, I've seen a lot more attacks and a lot more stuff going on in these brain-dead follower chat boards and message boards and one. Just funny, hilarious stuff. I saw one last night that said that Josh Reeves is on air telling people that the Kabbalah is what we need to follow, and that the Kabbalah is the secret truth that we all need to look into. I love it, man. You know, because you're not doing good stuff until people start attacking you. And it was funny because they went on to say, here's what you need to look into, and it was all about Babylon and Alice Bailey and pretty much everything I've covered over the past few weeks. I was sitting here going, oh wow, that's pretty good stuff, because you know that's the bottom line. If you're not over the target and you're not doing good stuff, no one would even bother talking about you at all. I mean, I spent almost a whole year on the air here, without anyone ever saying anything about me whatsoever. Now, they're coming after this network. They're coming after various shows. So that's it's just funny to see that kind of stuff out there, because it's just completely baseless and right. Oh, and the other one was calling us all Marxist and saying that we blame the New World Order on Christians, and we leave out the Vatican connections and all this stuff. And we've talked about it here on this show a zillion times, almost to the point of beating the horse until it was completely, dog meat. Talk about beating a dead horse. We beat this dead horse until it was dog meat. Folks, I mean, how many times have I told you? You know, Zionists, Jesuits, doesn't matter. They're all in it together, and we expose them all. If somebody's a Jesuit, I'll call him a Jesuit. If somebody's a Zionist, I'll call him a Zionist. Doesn't matter. So it's pretty interesting to me, and I've seen a lot of these chat boards that I'm talking about, and I'm not going to tell you what message boards these are, but just because I don't want anybody going over there and starting some stuff. But I will say this. I will say that I've seen at least 6 people in our chat board over the past week, in our chat room over the past week, say, hey, has anybody else had any problems with these forums? You go over there and you don't even say anything that's adversarial or anything negative about anybody at all, and you get banned. So, you know, that's how it goes. New World Order for Learning from the Pretoria News today. This one's up on rogovernment.com right now. A fundamental rethinking of how universities should function in the 21st century is underway. Traditional elite universities, all located in the North, are opening branches and establishing joint programs with universities in the South. China, India, countries in the Persian Gulf, and other Asian states are investing billions of dollars in the creation of intellectual centers. Outdated curricula are being revamped, scholars are being encouraged to think outside their disciplines and invest in emerging fields of inquiry. Radically new international learning experiences are being offered to staff and students with the ideas of podcasts, blogs, live chats, webcams, wikis, and online courses. In seminars, digital technologies are revolutionizing traditions of study and research. So basically what they've done here, this is interesting. Very interesting to me because they've pretty much, sounds like they've pretty much taken the tactics that we've used to educate ourselves on the information that, you know, you can't go get at a university. This information that we all get involved with and that we have all chosen to educate ourselves with on our own can't and will not be taught in the microcosm of a college classroom. But see, you know, I mean, think about that. The use of videos, podcasts, blogs, live chats, webcams, wikis, and online courses and seminars, digital technology, revolution traditions of study and research. And, you know, that's you're starting to see that be the status quo. Because, folks, they figured out, and if you don't think that they know everything about information acquisition that you and I know, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. I mean, you know, Microsoft didn't start partnering with the NSA in the late 1990s to put backdoors in everything from their Windows Millennia Edition, ME, I think that was what it was, and Windows 2000. That was when they first started putting in the NSA backdoors. And, of course, with the arrival of XP, XP was the one that first gave them a whole lot of power as far as being able to get in and track and trace you all the way across the board. Now, of course, with Vista, I mean, that thing's just a big piece of spyware as far as I'm concerned. But on the other side, we're going to do a whole lot more news as well. Your phone calls at 360-350-1486. Monday and Tuesday, rather. Golly, I don't know what day it is anymore. Tuesday edition of the Global Reality right here in Oracle. Stay with us. I'll be back here with you on the Global Reality on this Tuesday edition of the broadcast. My name is Josh Reeves. I'm your host. I want to thank you for tuning in to the broadcast today. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about eventually here in the broadcast as I do my frantic news gathering between the breaks here. But there is a lot of news, and there's a lot of stuff to get into and talk about today. So don't you worry. We will have a good show for you today on the broadcast. Wide open phone lines right now at 360-350-1486. Again, that number is 360-350-1486. Don't forget, coming up tomorrow, big show, big broadcast for you tomorrow. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to have any connection problems tomorrow. Otherwise, somebody's going to have somebody's head. I tell you, I'm going to have to I got to come up with a contingency plan for tomorrow. Borrow a phone or something, because tomorrow we got a big broadcast lined up for you, and it's going to be a good show. We're going to have Michael Tsarian in the first 2 hours of the broadcast tomorrow. 1 year anniversary of the Global Reality tomorrow, the 24th. Celebrating 1 year of being on the air and broadcasting this show out across the airwaves. And so we're going to have, we're going to try to have a greatest hits collection of the best, some of the best guests and people we've had up on the show. So for the first 2 hours tomorrow, we're going to have Mr. Michael Tsarian here with us. And it's going to be a special treat for you because our technical guru here, Aaron, at Oracle Broadcasting, who's really one of the unsung heroes of this network, no doubt about it. The guy's an absolute amazing guy, and we're fighting for him and his family as well when we do this because you know, the guy's awesome. But he set the the code for the network here for my show tomorrow to run for the first 2 hours. We have Mr. Michael Tsarian on with us. that 2 hours with Tsarian will be 100% commercial free, and that's something we've done twice. We did that back when we were on TrueNet Radio when we had Michael Tsarian on twice. We ran we ran a whole. I think we ran a whole 3 hours with him commercial free once, but that's something we've always done with him. And also, he's going to be with us on Skype. So he won't be with us on a phone. Michael Tsarian will be with us on the same technology I'm using right now to talk to you. So it will sound as if we're in the same room together, and it'll be 100% commercial free, and that's awesome. We were scheduled to have Chris Everard as well. I don't know if we're going to have Chris Everard for sure or not yet. There is a possibility we could still have him. I'm going to try to call his residence in the south of France today when I get off of the show and try to see if I can get a hold of him. Because, again, we had him booked, but his booking agent that he was with is no longer with him, so there was some sort of confusion there. But we may have him up tomorrow. I don't know. It'll just be a surprise if we do. And we may have some other surprise guests pop in as well. So big show coming up tomorrow on the one-year anniversary of the Global Reality. And before the break, I want to go back into what I was talking about here. It'll be fun. Go back to my article. Where did I leave off? Let's see. Hopefully I can find where I left off at. Oh, here we go. Wait. No, that's not it either. Let's see here. Well, I guess I'll just have to pick a different news story because I'm not finding the news story I was talking about before the break. I hate when that happens. You get so much going on that you can't find out where you left off. Very interesting. All right. Well, I'll just have to pick another story then, won't I? Let's see. Well, there's a ton of them today. Oh, there we go. New World Order for Learning. That's where I left off before the break. Yeah, and this is, it seems as if, they're starting to figure out that people no longer really have to go to some, government training camp or to some, college where they're paying out the nose to still be kept in a box and be conditioned. What was that? You ever seen that movie? You ever seen that movie Good Will Hunting before with Matt Damon? You ever seen that movie? There's a quote in there. There's a line in there where this guy's like reciting Chomsky like he's cool. It's like just because you memorize Chomsky, you think you're cool. Of course, Chomsky's an MIT shill. But he says something like you're going to wake up 30 years from now and realize that you blew $500,000 on an education you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library. That's kind of that's kind of the truth, I mean, you don't have to go. You can educate yourself, folks, and know more than most of your. I mean, most of the people I know that are awake are more educated than the people who went and spent 8 years in a college somewhere. Literally, I mean, just because you go and pay for a degree somewhere does not necessarily mean you know anything about the world history, geopolitics, and the inner workings of how the elite run the planet. I mean, they don't teach you that. There are so many things they don't teach you. So it looks as if through the use of bringing these sort of, new technologies into the fold, they're attempting to sort of take the self-education aspect that a lot of people have engaged in and put it in the sort of a classroom scenario. But it's funny that they would call it a new world order for learning. Why is it now that this has become a catchphrase? And I heard Doug Owen say this on his show the other night, and he had to 100% agree. These people, New World Order is getting thrown around more now than it does in our circles. You guys notice that? I mean, it's unbelievable. Everywhere you turn, it's a New World Order, financial New World Order. We need a new World Order. How about the newer New World Order, the older Old World New World Order? I mean, it's like it's getting thrown around everywhere in all these various terms more than we ever use it. So, I mean, what do you think that is, folks? It's getting thrown around because it's just like the North American Union, folks. I mean, the New World Order is already here. And I knew the New World Order was already here like 3 or 4 years ago. And I've told this story before, but it was one of those key moments for me. It was like, I was about 3 or 4 years ago, and I was just kind of flipping through the channels, and I saw Ted Turner on C-SPAN. And Ted, of course, Ted Turner is, openly calls for depopulation of the planet. All these various construction firms that tie back to him and tie into the Georgia Guidestones. But, I saw this clown on TV 3 or 4 years ago, and he was like giving a speech. You know how it talks? It kind of talks like foghorn leghorn. I say. Like he's some Civil War era plantation slave owner. His family probably was, to be honest with you. But excuse me. But he was on. This is like 3 or 4 years ago. Someone on C-SPAN, and some gentleman that was asking a question in the crowd where he was giving a speech at was like, Mr. Turner, how do you think the effects of globalization will affect the United States of America in the 21st century? And he's like, well, I say, if you're worried about fighting globalization, let me tell you, it's already here. Globalization is not something we can fight off. So if you're worried about globalization, then you better just cry me a river or something, because you're worrying about something that's already a foregone conclusion. And just real pompous and real talking in that sort of, Southern, Colonel Sanders type voice that he has, I guess he was, what's funny about that dude? I mean, that dude is insane. Literally, that guy is out of his freaking mind. I mean, that guy was so intense, Hanoi Jane couldn't even stick with his ass. My God. If you run Hanoi Jane off, I mean, you got problems, man. You know what I'm saying? But literally. This guy's you're just talking about, it's a foregone conclusion. Why are you worried about globalization? Why are you worried about the New World Order? You're worrying about something that's already here. And, to also tie that in with how many times you've seen, how many times, I think it was a few months ago, maybe it's 7, 8 months ago, everything runs together, but there was a period of time, earlier this year, I think it was, may have even been the end of last year, where Ted Turner was on like 3 or 4 different shows, and he was quoted like 3 or 4 different times, openly calling for depopulation. So that's kind of what's here. We got more news, more information, and your phone calls as well at 360-350-1486. This is the Global Reality Tuesday edition, right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Don't go anywhere, folks. All right, back here with you on the Global Reality on this Tuesday edition of the broadcast, right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here with us today. Wide open phone lines for you at 360-350-1486. And there is quite a bit of news today, believe it or not. And there is, of course, there is some more financial scaremongering going on, and there's various other stories to get into today. So we'll talk about, who knows where it's going to go today, folks. You never know with me. You never know what I'm going to be in the mood to talk about. I did have something planned that I wanted to talk about today, and I don't know if I'll talk about it or not, just because without having internet, I didn't really have time to put it all together today. But I do have something I want to mention and bring up, and what I'll do is I'll go into it a little bit today, and then I can't do it tomorrow because tomorrow's 1 year anniversary. Well, I'll prep it and I'll get into it. I'll just say this. I'm just going to go ahead and say this right now. When I first started this broadcast a year ago tomorrow, it was right in the heart of Ron Paul frenzy mania. And with everyone, you couldn't step 1 inch in either direction around you folks without finding someone that was a Ron Paul supporter and a Ron Paul fanatic, myself included. And at that time when I first started, this show, I had assumed that, I was, that I knew a lot and I knew quite a bit. And, I'd been researching this stuff for a very long time and reading books. But it didn't take but a few days to be on the air to start realizing that I really didn't know as much as I thought I did, and that there were lots of aspects and lots of things that that I hadn't seen or been allowed to see for whatever reasons. And so I had, the second or third show I got turned on to the Council for National Policy by Professor Peter Dale Scott on my program, and that was when I, started researching and pretty much have gone full-blown since there with, the beginning stages of creation of this film, and a 2-part film now that it's turned into. the secret right. And, you know, one of the things that has always bothered me, which I've talked about extensively here on the show, has been these connections. And there are a lot of them. There's not just one or two. There's tons of them. We went through a lot of it on Friday on the show when we went through that Reverend Doomsday Tim LaHaye article from Rolling Stone magazine. By the way, if you've never read that article, just Google Tim LaHaye Reverend Doomsday Rolling Stone, and you'll find that article. But that was the first thing to me when I first started researching the CMP was all these connections. You know, all these people that I had always heard on Patriot radio shows and I'd always assumed were, you know, all right people, and I always thought they were on board with, you know, our issues and whatnot. But always, you know, but at the same time, even when I didn't have any evidence, I always thought it was odd that, you know, former chief economist for the Reagan White House, the father of Reaganomics, former people that were into, you know, military black ops and all this stuff. I always thought it was strange that some of those people were in our ranks. Always seemed kind of suspect of those type of people to me. You know, I mean, that was just always kind of a weird thing. But, you know, I started finding out, you know, people like Larry Pratt ran Latin American death squads in the 1980s under Poppy Bush and Reagan. And I started seeing that, you know, people like Paul Craig Roberts were involved in the, you know, like the Hoover Institute, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, all these New World Order think tanks. And, you know, ties to all these, they're in this group where they're sitting at the same table as people like Alberto Gonzales and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and, you know, Rudy Giuliani and all this stuff. And red flags started going off to me immediately. Well, then all these other connections started coming out, and I started seeing, you know, predominantly these people brought out on Patriot radio shows. And you start finding out that they're connected to all these groups like the Heritage Foundation and all these eugenics type of groups and corporations. And, you know, you start seeing this picture painted before you you start seeing some serious controlled opposition on your hands. Well, I had, during that time, I had come across, that was in the heart of the Ron Paul mania. And during that time, the mainstream media had come out with a few stories, and there had been a few things coming out where people were trying to, at every turn, they were trying to paint Ron Paul to be a bad guy. They were trying to, you know, you had all this stuff where people were trying to pin him down to Freemasonry. And you had various people that were saying, you know, he gave Ben Affleck a Freemasonic handshake on the Bill Maher show, which I examined that and did not think that was a Freemasonic handshake. Still don't. Still not convinced of that. I'd done tons of research trying to pin the guy down to something because I was like, you know, look, if there's something to this, I'm going to nail this guy to the floor. You know, and so I looked and found, and yes, I found the connections where, like his wife, Carol Paul, and some of his daughters were involved in some of the Freemasonic offshoot groups like the Order of the Eastern Star and whatnot. And those were definitely red flag things, but never anything that really tied him down. But, you know, I did come across a lot of connections, folks, to Ron Paul and some of these members of the Council for National Policy. And for the whole time that I've been on air, I have really sort of sat on these connections. I never brought them out. I never really talked about them. I could have. I could have brought him out in the heart of his campaign. I didn't. I chose not to. I defended him at every turn. But I'm going to tell you, folks, after yesterday, and after the news that came out yesterday that Ron Paul has now officially endorsed Pastor Chuck Baldwin as the Constitution Party candidate and said he will vote for him and has officially endorsed him, I got to tell you, I just can't hold back these connections to the Council for National Policy that I found anymore. And really, that was a big sort of wake up call to me once I saw him endorse him. I went, okay, you know what? This all makes sense now, because these people, by their own admission, own and control every echelon of the Republican Party. They are the most powerful group behind the Republican Party. The Reverend Sun Myung Moon puts the most money into the Republican Party of any other donator or, you know, contributor, folks. Official numbers, official facts. You can look that up and verify that for yourself. The Reverend Sun Myung Moon puts that. And, of course, The Reverend Sun Myung Moon is a knight of Malta. He's one of these people that through the Vatican is bringing in the New World religion and hiding behind the guise of Christianity. I've told you that a million times, yet there's still people on message boards saying that I'm a Marxist because I'm blaming everything on Christianity. And I'm sorry, those type of people that are saying that kind of stuff are absolute feds. Because they take the reality of what I said and then turn it into something else. When anybody with 2 ears that's ever listened to this show knows what I've talked about a million times. But, I started seeing all these various connections. I can't remember the name of the gentleman. Well, I don't know if it was Ed Meese or one of these guys. But there's one of these guys I was reading about him, and he was talking about, working in Ron Paul's campaign, and he was a big CMP guy. And then that thing came out about Ron Paul writing the book with Louis Lehrman. He wrote a book about gold with Ron Paul in the early 1990s. And I mean, folks, look into Louis Lehrman. This guy's an absolute scumbag. I mean, he sided the Heritage Foundation, all these eugenics groups. And, I started seeing all this stuff and going, wait a second, there's a lot of connections here. And there are quite a few. We'll talk more about this on the other side, coming up in the second hour of the broadcast. Again, I'm not going to get into all this today, but I do have some concerns I want to express. Second hour around the corner, right here on Oracle Broadcast. Stay with us. Second hour of this Tuesday edition of the Global Reality right here on Oracle Broadcasting. I'm your host, Josh Reeves, and I want to welcome everybody to the show today. And thank you so much for tuning into the broadcast. Wide open phone lines at 360-3514. We'll get into more news and information later on in the broadcast for you. But right now, I'm going to continue talking about what I was talking in the second segment. And what I'll do is later on in the week, I'll put together a detailed piece on this with all my information, and we'll talk more about it. But I do want to address some of these issues and talk about this today. And let me first off preface this by saying I'm not here to demonize Ron Paul. I'm not here to per se attack him or anything else. But I do have to say that there are things that concern me, and a lot of these things that I put in the back of my mind and things that I have, tried to be a good little patriot. I kind of feel like I've played the game. I've kept my mouth shut about connections to him that I found to certain people that aren't good, and certain agendas I could see formulating around Ron Paul and things that I've seen happen. And I sort of played the game and played a good little patriot and kept my mouth shut because, hell, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I would have got called just as many names as I'm probably going to get called for talking about this right now because you don't question a God. And that's the problem, is people have propped up people like Ron Paul and other people in the patriot community to be gods. And once you start questioning someone's daddy figure, folks, you become a threat. So, Ron Paul endorsing Chuck Baldwin is a very dangerous and scary thing. Because Chuck Baldwin, to me, is more dangerous than even John McCain. But the fact of the matter is, every last single one of those people that you saw on that stage on the Republican end during the primaries have ties to the Council for National Policy. Every last one of them. Rudy Giuliani included, even though James Dobson and others tried to foment this phony debate in the media, saying that if Rudy Giuliani got the Republican nomination, that they would run a third-party candidate because no way would the evangelical right get behind Rudy Giuliani. And, of course, I knew that immediately was a fraud because Rudy Giuliani had been a keynote speaker at Council for National Policy meetings in the past and had been in attendance. So I knew right there this was a phony debate for the media. And so, I had seen all these various things going on, and they had, I'm sorry, I got hold on one second, folks. All right. Sorry. People PMing me during my show. It just throws me completely off of my game here. See, I'm completely thrown off and sidetracked now. This requires focus. So, there had been, okay, so you had the, I can't even talk now. First off, let's talk about Chuck Baldwin. First off, Chuck Baldwin is the former leader of the Moral Majority, the protege of Jerry Falwell. These are the Christian Reconstructionist movement. They openly talk about wanting to replace the Constitution with an Old Testament rule of law, the Ten Commandments. They believe that the Ten Commandments are the absolute rule of the law, which, my goodness, if you know anything about the priest class and you can trust anyone that says that, you got issues. You need to wake up. And so that's what they want to do. They want to replace the Constitution with a theocracy. And that's what many of these Council for National Policy people want to do. But see, that's the problem is they're not real Christians. They're phony Christians that act like they're Christians. And they have all these ties to Scientology, the occult, the Jesuits, the Vatican, all this stuff. And so all these connections, you had Louis Lehrman who had written a book with Ron Paul about gold. And Louis Lehrman is an an admitted Zionist. And I sort of said, oh, well, maybe he just wrote this book with this guy a long time ago. Maybe there was no connection there. I don't know. He had his Rally for the Republic meeting a few weeks ago. That big concert thing he had. And he had Grover Norquist. He had Grover Norquist on the stage with him. I mean, if you guys don't know who Grover Norquist is, go to a search engine, and I challenge you to not listen to me and do your own research. I know that's hard for a lot of you to do, but you'd rather just go on message boards and talk crap. I had to bite my tongue there. Than to do any sort of research on your own. But I challenge you to go to a search engine and type in Grover Norquist CMP or Grover Norquist Council for National Policy into a search engine and find the ties to the Heritage Foundation, to the Pioneer Fund, all of these groups that are always tied to white supremacist groups. And they tried this phony thing where they tried to pin Ron Paul to some white supremacist guy, some KKK guy or something at some dinner. And that was just so phony to me because, and I knew immediately when I saw that in the mainstream media that it was a fraud because, I'm sitting here going, well, wait a second. You're trying to pin Ron Paul as some sort of racist or some sort of white supremacist because of some dinner he had or with some guy that was there that gave him a donation or something that, of course, had been given donations to the KKK, so immediately the mainstream media jumped all over. Ron Paul is a racist. He's a white supremacist. And I knew it was a fraud because I'm sitting here going, well, wait a second. If let's just say for a minute you really did want to try to pin Ron Paul down as being a white supremacist or something, if that was really your goal to do that, I mean, why not go after him on some of these connections and some of these issues with these people he's connected are that really are tied to white supremacist groups? I mean, why not go after that? See, that's when I knew. I knew it was a total fraud. I was like, look, this is BS because, if you really wanted to roast the guy on connections to people that, look at Larry Pratt. My goodness gracious, he's been tied to all sorts of racist types of groups. And then, go to Gun Owners America and he's got they have a Ron Paul quote up there. And so, that whole thing to me, I was like, yeah, this is BS. They're just trying to demonize him. And really, if there was something, and you didn't really even see Ron Paul make that big of a stink about it. And then, my God, the way that campaign was handled. And Lee Rogers did an extensive amount of research on Jesse Benton and found all sorts of weird connections. I mean, all that money was raised in that campaign the way it was run. I mean, I just always thought that there was something controlled about the whole campaign. But, and then, of course, there was just all these red flags, You had the John Birch Society giving him the only, 10-star rating or the only, whatever the highest rating they give when they rate presidential candidates. Even though they said, we don't endorse presidential candidates. Yeah, right. But yet, they rate presidential candidates. And they gave Ron Paul the highest rating that they'd ever given any sort of presidential candidate ever, and of course Ron Paul was somebody called him on it. And no, I wasn't asleep. My internet connection didn't work. There was no internet and no water within like 2 square miles of my house. So I wasn't asleep. I didn't oversleep. It wasn't anything like that. Thank you. And, oh, man. It's just frustrating. I love how, you know what happens when you assume? You make an ass out of you and me. That's what happens. So, so I had seen this, the John Birch Society gives him this 1+ rating, and then Ron Paul, someone asked Ron Paul, like, the John Birch Society, man, you're really like, you're okay with him endorsing you? And he's like, he got all defensive about it. I forget what show it was on. It was on some show. He got all defensive about it. He was like, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with the John Birch Society? I don't think they're a bad group. They do good work. I mean, he got real defensive about it. I mean, real defensive about it. I know the John Birch Society's been behind Ron Paul for, 10, 11, 12 years, maybe even longer. And, of course, the John Birch Society is one of the key arms of the Council for National Policy. So that was another red flag for me. And then, of course, the Reagan connections and Ron Paul's connection to the Reagan administration and all the various people in there that are Knights of Malta. You had, those pictures where he's, with Ron shaking hands and then, Paul Craig Roberts, his ties to him, all these various people, Howard Phillips, him doing interviews with Howard Phillips endorsing him. And last week I watched there was a National Press Club event on C-SPAN. And it was like a thing about third-party candidates. You had Ron Paul, Cynthia McKinney, Chuck Baldwin, Bob Barr, and Ralph Nader. And when Chuck Baldwin was up there, he was talking about how the whole time that Ron Paul was running his campaign, he was on the campaign bus with Ron Paul. And that he was with Ron Paul every step of the way on the whole campaign. And so I thought, well, that seems a little bit interesting to me, doesn't it? Why would he be on that, on a campaign? First off, you shouldn't be electing anyone. You shouldn't be voting for anyone that's a preacher, much less someone who is the protege of Jerry Falwell and the Christian Reconstructionist movement. I mean, you're going to sit here and tell me you're going to put somebody to head up the Constitution Party that is part of a group that openly talks about wanting to replace the Constitution with the Ten Commandments? Something about that sound a little bit messed up to anybody else but me. And so he goes on to say, I was on the whole campaign with Ron Paul, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on to praise Jerry Falwell in the same breath. And then now a week later, I'm sitting here, okay, Ron Paul comes out and says, well, I can't support Bob Barr, so I'm not staying neutral on this. I'm supporting Chuck Baldwin. And that was just like, to me, I was going, well, this all makes sense, Think about why that campaign was run the way it was now. It all makes sense to me. Because they weren't going to get in someone who could go out because it's not about winning, folks. It's just about having somebody they can get behind that can go out and proselytize to the masses and get their agendas out to a few people. That's all it is. Maybe bring on some new people. Because they were not going to get their theocracy. And no, chat person, whoever you are, deluded in the chat room, I did not say, see, this is how good disinfo starts. I did not frickin' say that Ron Paul was a member of the goddamn CNP. I mean, would you please stop this shit? Man, I'm sick of this. I never said that, but yet you got somebody in the chat room already saying that I said that he's a member of the Council for National Policy, and I never said that. See, this is how it always starts. People hear what they want to hear. They don't hear what you're talking about. And they just, and then the next thing I know, there's going to be all this stuff going around saying, Josh Reeves said that Ron Paul is a member of the Council for National Policy. And I never, ever, ever, ever said that. Okay, I'm talking about the connections he has to people in the group. My goodness. Clean your freaking ears out, please. This always happens, man. I mean, I'm subjected to this every single week. If it's not me saying that, all people from all countries are are dumbed down. So whether you're an immigrant or whether you're not an immigrant or you're, people are lazy and conditioned in all countries. Everyone's been subjected to the New World Order. But then that gets twisted into, you just said all Mexicans are lazy. Oh! It doesn't freaking matter what I talk about or what I bring up. Someone tries to twist it, and then, of course, I'm exposing the Council for National Policy, and then all of a sudden that turns into I'm blaming Christians for being in the New World Order, or I'm blaming Christians for running the New World Order. People just hear what they want to hear. And they just tie what they want to tie to everything. Think for yourself and just listen, please. But you see, that's how disinfo gets started, folks. All it takes is one person taking one thing out of context and running with it, and the next thing you know, you've got full-blown disinfo running everywhere on your hands. That's just, we can't do that. Because it doesn't matter if you have an archive of someone saying something 7 ways to Sunday. Someone will still try to pin you down to something else. And look, again, this is not an attack on Ron Paul. I stated that before I started talking about this. I'm simply expressing to you the concerns I have for the Ron Paul campaign being run the way it was. Then all of a sudden, they flip the script. They get all the people in the Patriot community who put all that money behind Ron Paul to now give their support to Chuck Baldwin and put all their money and all their support behind someone who openly talks about wanting to replace the Constitution with a theocracy, folks. All right, back here with you on the Global Reality right here on Local Broadcasting. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. I want to welcome everybody to the show. Thank you so much for being with us today for the broadcast. And yeah, I'm getting into this right now. Now I'm talking about this. I'm going to continue to talk about this for as long as it takes me to get out everything I want to talk about. And look, look, I'm sorry. I apologize. I apologize to the listeners. It just frustrates me when people insinuate that you said something you didn't. And someone came in the chat room and said, Ron Paul is a CMP member? And I never said that. I just never said, I never said that. And I have not said that. And I would never say that in a million years unless I had his freaking name on a list. Okay? What I'm talking about here is the fact that there are connections to a lot of people with Ron Paul who are Council for National Policy members. And these people, one of their stated goals is to bring about a theocracy in this country. They want to replace the Constitution. That's the problem. You talk to a lot of these people and you ask them, okay, well, if you don't like this criminal government and you don't, a lot of these patriot types, you ask them, and it always goes back to we need to have a Christian form of government. I've talked to a lot of them, man. A lot of them do say that. A lot of the John Birch Society types, a lot of those people, they are really, they really believe that they can get neocons and stuff out of power, and they can get the sort of banker ran New World Order out of power, and replace it with a gold standard, which is great. Solid money is a great thing versus this worthless Federal Reserve crap we have now. But you get down to the heart of what these people want to, what their real agenda is, and it's always to bring about a alleged Christian form of government. These people are not Christians. These people are anything but, especially these Council for National Policy members. They have ties to the occult, they have ties to Scientology, they have ties to the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, but they hide behind this guise of their Christianity. And that's something the Vatican's been at the forefront for a lot of years. They hide behind the same thing, yet we really look at what they're into and you look at their iconography. I mean, folks, you don't think that Caligula had a bunch of obelisks placed inside the Vatican just for kicks and giggles, do you? I mean, you really don't think that, do you? Come on. You don't think that the Pope wears that Dagon fish people hat for just kicks and giggles, do you? Not for a second. And so, I had all these various connections and these various tidbits of information. And things that sort of, nexused back to Ron Paul concerning the Council for National Policy that I was, concerned with. But I'd kept him off the air. I had not brought him to the forefront. But yesterday when I found out he was now endorsing Chuck Baldwin, and I'd already been railing on the fact that, people in the Patriot community had already been, blindly getting behind Ron Paul. You had some, various well-known Patriot radio people openly stating that they were going to vote for Chuck Baldwin, which I thought was interesting because, a lot of before the Ron Paul campaign, for years, predominantly the line that you heard from established Patriot radio hosts was, well, I don't vote and I'm not going to vote, and voting is stupid because all the elections are rigged and they control the system. Then all of a sudden, as soon as the Ron Paul campaign comes around, it's, okay, now everybody get out and vote for Ron Paul. And that always seemed odd to me. Whether or not Ron Paul was a good choice to get behind or not, that's up to the individual to decide, but it just seemed odd to me that I sort of started seeing this precedent change where, it used to be the old school, even for a couple of years, only like 2 years ago, people in the Patriot community were saying, don't vote. It's you're wasting your vote because both parties are bought and paid for, and they're all controlled, and it doesn't really matter. And so I'm not dropping here. I'm taking pauses in between what I'm trying to say because I'm trying to choose my words wisely because it's very thin ice to tread on because it's thin ice to tread on because you're sort of toeing the line between wanting to just inform people and get out some information and being all out accusatorial. And I'm certainly not being all out accusatorial here. I don't want anybody to get that impression. I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible here and just strictly stick to the facts. But that did concern me that the sort of status quo for the Patriot community had been, look, voting is all rigged and controlled, so don't vote. Well, then, of course, we had the Ron Paul campaign, and then you had now Chuck Baldwin, and everyone in the Patriot community getting behind Chuck Baldwin. I'm going, have you guys even looked into this guy? Have you looked into the ties to the group? And I find it funny that me and Michael Vale used to have, pages upon pages of links of Chuck Baldwin to the Council for National Policy. And right when that guy announced he was going to run for president, poof and be gone, man. All that stuff disappeared off the internet like you would not believe. And Michael Vale's informed me that does happen a lot with a lot of things. He's seen it happen multiple times. And you got to grab that stuff while it's there. So I've made sure that I've done that with a lot of my my CMP stuff, because a lot of this stuff, folks, once they figure out people are talking about, they have it yanked. But I had, that was my thing. I'd seen all these people blindly getting behind Chuck Baldwin. And then, of course, Ron Paul comes out yesterday and says he's supporting Chuck Baldwin. And I went, my goodness, folks. They used his platform. Chuck Baldwin was not on the campaign trail with Ron Paul the entire time for just, by chance. And when you start to see this thing formulating where they're using the money that got behind Ron Paul, they're using the big support base that Ron Paul had, and sort of trying to transfer that whole cloth over to Chuck Baldwin now. And there are a lot of people in this Patriot community, folks, really buying that and really getting behind that. And I'm certain. And so, what am I supposed to think? I know the agenda that these people have, folks. I know what they're up to, and I know what they want to do. So how can I not sit here and think that the way that the Ron Paul campaign was run, all his, the supporting of the John Birch Society, the supporting of Gun Owners of America, Grover Norquist at his Rally for the Republic, the gold book he wrote with Louis Lehrman, interviews and all these, with Howard Phillips getting behind him. Howard Phillips is an absolute demon, folks. I'm sorry. Look into him. If you don't believe me, look into Howard Phillips. Heritage Foundation, Pioneer Fund, all these things. And I'm saying, wait a second. They're transferring the Ron Paul support over to Chuck Baldwin whole cloth? And we're not supposed to ask questions about someone who's the former leader of the moral majority who wants to replace it with a theocracy? So it's just, I have a lot of questions. We're going to talk more about this on the other side. This is the Global Reality on Oracle Broadcasting. Stay with us. All right, back here with you on the Global Reality right here on Oracle Broadcasting. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. And, I'm going to continue to talk about this just because I deem it worthy of talking about. And I'll do more about this later on in the week and try to put together some more of the connections and information for you. But here's the bottom line, folks. As I talked about on Friday, there are a lot of forces. We have controlled opposition going on here. There's no doubt about it. And I personally believe that the entire Patriot community and the Patriot movement was set up from the beginning by groups like the John Birch Society via the Council for National Policy as a controlled opposition group. We have evidence in spades in this direction. Is it a coincidence that the guy that started the Council for National Policy, the Reverend Tim LaHaye, 33rd degree Freemason, by his own admission and by the admission of the Rolling Stone magazine article, started his career in Berkeley, California, being a conspiracy theorist par excellence, openly talking about New World Order conspiracy theories and UN agendas and all this stuff, proselytizing at John Birch Society meetings, and then launching his ministry right in the heart of California, where that really became the hotbed for where the Reagan campaign originated from. All these high-level people that were a part of the Reagan administration, all Council for National Policy members. Ron Paul, a friend of Reagan. Many pictures with him and Reagan together. And you start to see all these people now that have been brought up to be purveyors of the Patriot community. People like Paul Craig Roberts, former chief economist of the Reagan White House, father of Reaganomics. All the connections he has to the Heritage Found, the CSIS, the Hoover Institute, Cato Institute, all these various groups. Larry Pratt, who led Latin American death squads for Poppy Bush and Reagan in the 1980s. Oliver North, Iran-Contra, Council for National Policy member. And so you had all these various connections. And they have set this up as phony opposition and controlled opposition from the very beginning. As I talked about the other day, that's why they have these various people that come out and cover individual issues. You don't have one person that covers North American Union. You'll have one person that represents the economy and geopolitics. But it does not matter, folks, which person that it is on the Republican ticket you're voting for. They are all controlled by the Council for National Policy. Now, I thought it was interesting there. I had a news story that I covered last year. And, and I was talking about this to some of the guys last night. It was interesting to me that the same week that I found out about the Council for National Policy for the first time was the same week they had their fall meeting in Salt Lake City, Utah, where Dick Cheney was the keynote speaker. Many mainstream news outlets reported on this, talked about Dick Cheney meeting in private with this, secret cabal called the Council for National Policy. Well, a few months later, right in the heart of when all of the primaries were going on, the Council for National Policy, the mainstream media reported that the Council for National Policy had had a secret meeting, and that they had brought in all of the Republican presidential candidates except for Rudy Giuliani. And James Dobson had made it, very clear in the media that the CMP would run a third party if Giuliani got the nomination. Of course, Giuliani had been a keynote speaker at CMP meetings before, so I knew it was a total fraud and a total lie anyway, and it didn't really matter. And for a period of time, there was a lot of talk going around that they were saying, who are they going to choose for their candidate? They may run the CMP may run someone in the Constitution Party ticket, They may run Chuck Baldwin. They may run Jerome Corsi. And that was openly stated on various right-wing websites that they were more than likely the CMP was going to run either Chuck Baldwin or Jerome Corsi. And Jerome Corsi was on the Midnight Rider once with Mike Chambers, and it was actually the same night that we had confronted Paul Craig Roberts on the Intel Strike Report. And that same night, he had Jerome Corsi on the Midnight Rider, and I'd called in and asked Jerome Corsi, hey, why should we believe anything that you're saying if you're involved in a group that won't release its membership list and holds its meetings in utter secrecy? And his response very angrily was, I'm not a part of any secretive groups. The end. And then 2 nights later, folks, 2 nights later, Jerome Corsi himself is on the Intel Strike Report with Doug Owen and Michael Vale, bragging about being a Council for National Policy member and bragging about how they were going to run him as their third-party candidate, but chose not to. And now in hindsight, we know when we found out that the initial reports that came out of some of the right-wing websites were correct, and that it said that they were going. Folks, I was reading back as early as November of last year they were going to run either Chuck Baldwin or Jerome Corsi. And lo and behold, they ran Chuck Baldwin instead of Jerome Corsi. I mean, Chuck Baldwin runs newswithviews.com, folks. You hear those commercials on Patriot Radio stations. Why do you think that is? And there's no doubt, folks. Do you understand what Larry Pratt called his Latin American death squads in the 1980s? You know what the name for the Latin American death squads were? They were called the Patriot Movement, folks. The Latin American death squads that Larry Pratt ran in the 1980s were called the Patriot Movement. And we've all been led to follow this thing called the Patriot Movement that has the same people involved in it. Controlled opposition. They used the Ron Paul campaign to gauge numbers in an attempt to gauge how many people believe that 9/11 was an inside job. I mean, folks, do you think it was an accident that Ron Paul never came out in the mainstream media during his campaign and said that 9/11 was an inside job and that the government was responsible for 9/11, but yet at every campaign stop and everywhere you went, there were people, 9/11 truthers there with 9/11 truth signs? Do you think it was a mistake that Neil Cavuto threw a question about, you have a lot of people that are associated that believe 9/11 was a conspiracy. Are you ready to defame those people right now tonight and disassociate yourself with those people right here openly in this forum? That was not a mistake. That was a carefully planned operation to tie anyone who believes 9/11 was an inside job to Ron Paul and to tie Ron Paul to them and to set the precedence for identifying those type of people out into the general public, and also being able to relegate anyone who believes in those same beliefs in limited government, sound money, and then also on the flip side of that, the truth about 9/11 into being in the loser category. And they're just transferring it all over to Chuck Baldwin right now, folks. Whole cloth. They're just transferring it all over there. You know, you got to be a good patriot, get behind him. There was people in this chat room last night saying, if you don't get behind Chuck Baldwin, then you're a Fed and you're hurting the movement. God bless Chuck Baldwin. We got to get behind Chuck Baldwin. Oh, please, if you don't, you're hurting the movement. Cute. On the other side. All right, back here with you on the Global Reality right here on Oracle Broadcasting. I'm your host, Josh Reeves, and I want to welcome everybody to the show today. Thank you for tuning in to us here. We're smack dab in the middle of the second hour of the show. And I'm talking right now, and I'm going to talk about this and finish up talking about this and then get into some news coming up in the next hour. But it's important to always ask questions, and it's important to always look into anything for yourself. And, it's funny to me that, as soon as something challenges someone's paradigm, you know, automatically the names start being called. And, you know, it's very, very interesting. And I don't know if there's anything to this. Have you guys ever seen the letter that, have you guys ever seen the letter that Ron Paul wrote to Pope John Paul II? It's pretty interesting. But, I'm not saying there's anything to it. I'm just saying, you know, it's pretty interesting. But you know, here's the main thing about this is that we have to come to grips with, and I'll be honest with you folks, I was really in a real state of denial about these connections to the CMP and Ron Paul, and there's just a ton of them. And every person he is connected to is, you know, is a Council for National Policy member. And I mean, really, the big kicker for me was when I saw Grover Norquist on his list of his Rally for the Republic. I mean, that was when I was like, man, oh, man, come on. I mean, Grover Norquist, really? I mean, that was, to me, I was like, man, you know, I don't know. But Ron Paul is also associated with the John Birch Society. He's the only congressman rated 100% on their conservative index. And he used to be a member. That's another thing I found. He's a former member of the John Birch Society as well. And that to me is almost enough, you know. That when you really look into the origins of the John Birch Society, they are also behind wanting to replace the Constitution with a theocracy, and are also have been predominantly behind, you know, quote unquote conspiracy theories for a great amount of years. Gary Allen's None Dare Call It a Conspiracy. Many of you may have read that book. I read it when I was younger, and thought it was one of the better books ever written. Hal Lindsey wrote some great books back in the day on the New World Order and the Illuminati and whatnot. I mean, these were sort of the things that a lot of us, you know, that are here now. And I know that Michael Vale would back me up on this as well. You know, a lot of us cut our teeth on that stuff, man. I mean, we really did. And I'm not regretting that I cut my teeth on a lot of that stuff. I mean, None Dare Call It a Conspiracy by Gary Allen was one of the books, along with Jim Marsh Crossfire, that woke me up. But, you know, as you get older, folks, and you start to do research, and you start to come out of your, you know, control paradigm, and you start to realize that, you know, you look into people like Hal Lindsey, and you look into these people, you know, and you start to find out that, well, wait a second, they're involved in these groups that have always been behind conspiracy theories. And you start to find out that, you know, I mean, ask one of these people sometimes, folks. Ask one of these people. I mean, if you run into one of these Kool-Aid drinking patriots, one of these blind followers of the patriot community that really just gets behind, you know, whoever some leader tells them to get behind, ask them. You know, I've done that. I've done it recently. They either don't know, or they say a Ten Commandments rule of law in the United States. That's one of the two answers you get. But a lot of people, especially some of the 9/11 truthers, you know, you ask them, well, hey, what do you want to happen? What do you want to see be the replacement for this rogue government? And a lot of them just say, they don't know. They haven't thought about it. And that's the problem. They're banking on you not thinking about it, folks. Because if they can bank you on not thinking about it, they can help bring in a theocracy. Wait a second. What is this article Lee's putting in there? Norquist defends McCain after Florina's tax-raising remarks from July 14, 2008. America's foremost anti-tax crusader is coming to John McCain's defense after a high-ranking advisor, Senator McCain, suggested that he would He would if the conditions prove right, raise taxes on wealthy Americans. Grover Norquist, the head of Americans for Tax Reform, said he was confident McCain would not raise taxes should he become president. Well, thank you, Mr. Rogers. I appreciate you putting that article in the chat room. I had never seen that. Well, my goodness freaking gracious. Grover Norquist supporting McCain back in July, and then this month he's at the rally for the Republic with Ron Paul. That seem a little bit odd to you? Huh. You know, I mean, that's why sometimes it's like, what's the use? Because, I'm here, folks. I'm trying to get out information so we can break you out of another box that you've been led to. But yet, doing that all of a sudden makes you a target and makes you an enemy because you're questioning the belief system of the quote-unquote patriot movement, and you're hurting the movement. No, you're hurting the movement by staying inside of a box. You're hurting the movement for not asking the tough questions you need to ask. And not coming out with these connections and the information when it's staring you right in the face. So in that aspect, and from that point of view and that standpoint, I can say I have been guilty of hurting the movement. Because I, for a long period of time, have had a lot of these connections and a lot of this information. I've sat on them, folks, because I thought it was the right thing to do. I'm going to tell you right now, Ron Paul supporting Chuck Baldwin is a huge disappointment for me, and I will not get over it, and I will not, no longer or ever again, regardless of what you want to say about the connections, regardless of whether you, believe the connections, don't believe the connections, I don't really care. It's not up for me to decide. I'm just saying right now, right here today for me, I can no longer support Ron Paul. I can no longer be behind Ron Paul. I can no longer, I just can't support the guy. I am no longer, I'm announcing it right now today, right here. That's it for me. And I won't defend him anymore. And if I find connections to him that I think you need to hear about, I'm going to tell you about them. And that's just all there is to it. Because to me, by supporting Chuck Baldwin and supporting someone who openly talks about wanting to replace the Constitution with a theocratic form of government, being in the Constitution Party, folks, is a complete affront to what the Constitution Party should be. It is a complete affront to, it's just a slap in the face. All right, back here with you on the third hour of the Global Reality right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. And I want to talk more, we're going to get into some news. I'm still kind of on this. And, I find it pretty odd and strange that, right before, I don't know, I think it's odd that right before Ron Paul, another one of those synchronicities don't always work in your favor. Let's just say that. Synchronicities, there's also, when you get involved in this stuff, folks, you synchronicities start to happen all around. And they happen all around the play, all around you, and it's it's very odd. But I think it's odd that I would be attacked on message boards for claiming that there was people claiming that I ignore the Jesuit and the Vatican control, and that I blame the New World Order on Christians. And I mean, you guys know me. You guys have listened to my show so many times, and even if you hadn't, you've listened to it long enough to know that that's not. I've never, in any way, shape, or form, ever implied that. And the only time that I even talk about Christians is to expose the control of the priest class and how they've manipulated religion as a mechanism for control while keeping the information and the true religion to themselves and not giving it to the rest of us, and to also expose these phony Christians in the Council for National Policy. But I've stated many times on record, many times, and to be honest with you, I mean, I talk more about the Jesuits in the Vatican probably than many shows in the whole realm and scope of this type of radio. But I can talk about them and point out the connections to you and show you where they do have control and where they do have tentacles in without having to resort to Everyone is a freaking Jesuit, and this is all Jesuit conspiracy. Same as I can get up here and expose Zionists, and there's a lot of them. There's a whole lot of them. There's a whole lot on both sides. But that's the real point, is they're all in it together, man. And I'm sorry, if you can't wake up to the fact that the Zionists and the Jesuits sit at the same table at the Council for National Policy and other groups, and that these people are all in the same dugout, so to speak. They're all on the same team, folks. They're all New World Order. I mean, I've stated that I don't know how many times, and it's the truth. So I don't care if they're Zionists, I'll call them out. I don't care if they're Jesuits, I'll call them out. But to imply that I'm covering up for the Vatican and the Jesuits by blaming this all on Christians is just an absolute ridiculous piece of propaganda and disinfo. And again, these cowards won't call my show, but obviously they're listening because they had links to this same person claimed that I was saying that the Kabbalah is what we need to follow. The Kabbalah is what and I know when that show was last Thursday. Remember, I was reading out of Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. So from now on, if you read out of any Masonic doctrines, be careful out there, other hosts. Be careful, because from now on, if you read out of any Masonic text, that means that you are 100% supporting the ideologies that are out of that text you're reading. Don't forget that. and again, like a broken record, I've got up here on many times, at many occasions, and said, I mean, Lee Rogers has done it as well. I mean, we all have gotten up here and said, look, man, we're just bringing you this stuff. We're just putting it out in the court of public opinion. Don't shoot the messenger here. Don't kill the teacher, man. The teacher's always a threat. And I'll have Tsarian tell you that again tomorrow. He's told you that before. We're going to have Michael Tsarian on the program tomorrow. I'm super excited. 2 hours commercial free with Michael Tsarian right here on the 1 year anniversary of the Global Reality coming up tomorrow. And we're also probably going to have some other surprise guests for you as well. I'll keep those under my hat for now, just till we get some other things confirmed. But, yeah, we'll probably have some other surprise guests for you. But, you know, I mean, all of us, we've all many times, you know, we get into Samaria, or we get into the Anunnaki, or if we get into, you know, it doesn't matter, any of this stuff. You know, we've all added the caveat on it that, look, you know, we don't necessarily believe what these people believe, but the fact is they believe it. And if they believe it the way they believe it, and they put it into action the way they do, and that the cost of human life is no consequence to these people, then you better start paying damn attention to what's going on here, and you better start researching it and putting it out there for other people to find. Because if you don't know what's going on in the mindset of these criminals, folks, then you are a dead duck in the water already. And I know that. Let me tell you something. I know that. I may not know a lot, folks, but I know that. If you don't know the mindset, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, all battles are won before they're ever fought. Know your enemy. Get in his mind. Find out what he's thinking. Find out what's going on inside his head. Find out what makes him tick. And we've all done some great work to do that here. I'm sorry, I'm not tooting our own horn. I'm not scratching our own back, but myself and Michael Vale, who's done a great amount of work doing that, getting into the mindset, Lee Rogers, we've really pushed forward, I think, more than anybody else. I think the three of us have really, more than anybody else, been effective at getting into the mindset of what these people are behind. Michael Vale's found a lot of stuff. Lee Rogers has found a lot of stuff pertaining to the priest class religions. The mindset of what these people believe, folks, that's an important aspect. That is an important thing to do, and that somehow has been left by the wayside and left by the side of the road up to this point. So, you know, oh, well, you're talking about how the elite are into the Kabbalah, and you're talking about how all religions and how these people believe that the Word, you know, the Word, they say that all the God created everything out from the Word, and that they believe that the original Word was Kabbalistic. So that means that I'm into the Kabbalah. I'm not into Jewish mysticism, sorry. Go find someone else to tag that onto. But again, it is cool. I mean, it is cool. I love it. You know, let them come, man. Let them bring it on. Bring the attacks on. Because they don't start coming after you till you're over the target. That is the bottom line. But, well, there's just so many connections to the Council for National Policy, and I mean, so many of these people are Knights of Malta members. Phyllis Schlafly, the only living Dame of Malta. I mean, her bloodline, she's a Merovingian blue blood, folks, on both sides of her family. She is such a rare bird. Direct bloodline descendant of William Wallace, Braveheart. Direct descendant of the founders of the Rosecrucians. I mean, on and on, folks. It's just unbelievable. Pat Buchanan, Knights of Malta. Ronald Reagan was Knights of Malta. All these Knights of Malta people. One of the past directors of the John Birch Society was the father of the Knight of Malta, Joseph E. Schmitz, who is now a high-up executive with the Blackwater and whose family has married into the Bush family. Joseph E. Schmitz is a sovereign military order of Malta and an executive now with Blackwater. His father was a big shot with the John Birch Society. Of course, in the John Birch Society, he's very friendly with Ron Paul, and he's very friendly with them. John G. Schmitz was a Birch Society national director. And, of course, there's all the connections with these different white supremacist groups. Study into Roman Catholic Robert Welch. Robert Welch was the creator of the John Birch Society. He was also a Roman Catholic and a Shriner Freemason. He became a Roman Catholic when he was dying, and he was also friends with Joseph McCarthy. McCarthy was trained at Marquette University by Jesuits. In the end, the Jesuits turned on him and for some of his later actions and assassinated him by proxy. And so, a lot of these people, the originators of the John Birch Society, and a lot of these originators of the Council for National Policy, no doubt about it. There are tons of these people are Knights of Malta. Tons of them have allegiances to the Vatican. I've got a little book right here. Let me reach down here and get this. I got this off eBay. It's in a little plastic bag. And this is the Constitution and Bylaws of the Paramocan Commandery, Ancient and Illustrious Order of the Knights of Malta. Established in Jerusalem AD 1048. I have a little book here. This is an awesome little book. I got it off of eBay for like $10. And it's a Knights of Malta Constitution and Bylaw book. And it has a little certificate in here that's emblazoned with a little stamp. And it's the stamp that it's a certificate. And it says, this certifies that, I can't read the person's name, was duly admitted to membership in Perkman Commandery number 338 at a stated convocation held on the 12th of January, 1907. So, wow, this book is from 1907. Wow, it's in great shape. And it's stamped. You know how when you go get something notarized, right? They put it with a stamp and it's like emblazoned. It's like kind of perforated into the paper. Well, I'm looking at this perforation on this stamp. It's amazing. Because the little perforation on this stamp shows a Knights Templar looking gentleman on a horse, and he's holding a flag with a Maltese cross on it. And this is an interesting little book to go through. One of the things that's interesting about when you read the Constitution and the oath that the Knights of Malta take, and I plan on putting some scans of this and using this in my film, Secret Rite. But what's interesting when you look at the oath that the Knights of Malta take, they swear an allegiance to the Pope and the Vatican above all other pledges and allegiances, including that of the U.S. Constitution. And I think that in and of itself is a scary thing when you look at all these people that are Knights of Malta members in the Council for National Policy. You've got Christian Zionists in there as well. But the Christian Zionists, a lot of them are also Knights of Malta members as well. So that, that squashes that. Yes, you have people that are Jewish that are Knights of Malta. But you can see, as soon as I start exposing this side, then the next thing you're going to see is, Well, now he's saying it's all the Jesuits and all the Catholics, and he's not blaming the Jews or anything, so he's probably a Jew. You see, I mean, so it doesn't matter. You expose one side, you expose the other. I expose them all, but yet it's not enough to please anybody all the time, of course. But when you have a bunch of people in a group like the Council for National Policy, and these people openly state and pledge their allegiance to the Vatican and the Pope above all other allegiances, including that of the U.S. Constitution. And yet, these people are involved in groups called the Constitution Party. And they rub shoulders and they hang out and they sit at the same table with all of these people that have Knights of Malta. You know, Ronald Reagan was a Knight of Malta, right? The chairman of the frickin' board starts spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I'm a Knight of Malta, baby. Oh, wait, did I let that slip out? Hey, Dino, give me another drink, baby. Hey, yeah, I got to get another drink in here. I kind of let it slip that I'm a Knight of Malta, baby, but it's okay. I'm the chairman of the board. Hey, get Marilyn on the phone. We're going to have some fun here. But yeah, you know, all of these people, man. I mean, you got Knights of Malta 7 Ways to Sunday. And the people that were involved in the Kennedy assassination, all the suspects that we have, the Hunt Oil brothers, the H.L. Hunt, John Birch Society, Knights of Malta, these people paid for the wanted for treason posters to be put around Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. Those trace back to the John Birch Society and the Hunt Oil family. They're Knights of Malta. I mean, they killed him in Masonic Dealey Plaza on the 33rd parallel. Give me a break. So the bottom line of this is, folks, is that if you are getting behind a candidate who is tied to the Knights of Malta, who swears allegiance to the Pope and the Vatican above all other allegiances, you are setting yourself up for your own destruction, because these people do not want to uphold the Constitution. They want to replace it with a theocratic Ten Commandments form of government, because they hide behind the guise of Christianity, just like the Vatican does. So I don't care if it's Zionists, the Vatican, the Jesuits, any of them. They all hide behind Christianity, and they all use it for control, and they're all freaking New World Order, and we have been lied to and led down a phony path, and there is controlled opposition everywhere. Break out of it, break out of it, break out of it. Let's go. Surrender yourself to freedom, and do not buy another lie. My name's Josh Reeves. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Josh Reeves, thank you so much for tuning in to the broadcast today, folks. I tell you what, really warms my heart that you guys would be with us today for the broadcast. We got a lot more stuff to talk about. We got a lot more news. We got a lot more information. We got a lot of topics to get into. You want to be a part of the show? You want to be a part of the program? You want to put your 2 cents on the record? 360-350-1486 is the number. Wide open phone lines for you right now on the show. And, you know, I'm fired up now because, you kind of go through these things where at first you go through a period of where you just, some of this stuff, I'm telling you folks, the truth is not comfortable. The truth is not a warm, fuzzy blanket on a cold winter night. It's a cold, swift kick in the ass while you're naked in the dead of winter. That's what the truth is. But it's also a very spiritual and real dross, fire-burning catharsis. It's a real. It's just. I mean, it breaks you out of bondage. It busts the chains off of you. So while it's not comfortable and while it's not that warm, fuzzy blanket that you can wrap around you, and that's the problem, folks. We've had the warm, fuzzy blanket wrapped around us for too long. Didn't it seem too convenient that after you woke up to the fraud of the controlled corporate media and after you woke up to the fraud of this criminal government, didn't it seem too convenient? Anything, folks, anything in the world that's too good to be true probably is. That's one of the things life has taught me. And didn't it just seem a little too convenient to you that after you woke up to the lies and the fraud and the disinformation and the control, doesn't it seem now, it probably didn't before, but doesn't it seem now a little bit too convenient that you had a new paradigm and a new warm, fuzzy blanket waiting on you to be wrapped around you? Didn't it seem, folks, a little too convenient that that was there, ready, willing, and waiting for you with open arms? Once you made that journey and that trek away from the mainstream media, the corporate-controlled media, the lies of the government, the phoniness of the false left-right paradigm, the truth about 9/11, the Kennedy assassination, and the like, how religions are controlled, all of it. That's what I understand now. But see, I've been on this path my whole life. I was questioning stuff at a young age, but see, that doesn't matter. Because there still are control valves that we all fall into. But right now, right here today, folks, no longer are you in that. You're now free from that. You know, so many people, I think, start to identify themselves with this movement. Or with the movement that we're now emancipating ourselves from. The established, we'll just refer to it as the established patriot movement at this point. And consider ourselves not a part of that. But, you know, people start to identify themselves by the established movement. And identifying yourself and who you are, you know, with any sort of function like that, I think is dangerous. I mean, you know, I think if you're someone who, I mean, you know, you see people that identify themselves by their job. You know, they're a cop, and so when they're not on the job, they still act like a cop because they identify themselves and who they are with their job. Or someone who is in a high-level management position at a big company. Then you see them start to treat their friends and their family that way when they're not on the job. They identify with their job, so they start to micromanage their friends, and they start to, you know, make managerial decisions on their family and whatnot. You see, that's when people start identifying themselves as their job. And I certainly don't identify myself, as you know, by the fact that I do a radio show. That's not what makes me who I am. Doing this show is not what makes me the person that I am. Has it made me a better person since I've been doing it? Absolutely. But it's not who I am, you know. I'm not the global reality. I'm not this show. I'm not I'm not the guy that goes and does my job function at my slave job. And, you know, and cooks food for people. That's not me. But the problem is that a lot of people have come into the Patriot movement and the 9/11 Truth movement looking for an identity. Because they're disenfranchised by the mainstream media, they're disenfranchised by the corporate culture, they're disenfranchised by the government at large and the two-party phony controlled system. And so they need a new identity. And have we all been guilty of that? Have we all fallen into that at some point? A most resounding yes. Have I been guilty of that myself? Was I guilty of that myself at one time? A most resounding absolutely yes. But how many people out there have the cojones to own up to it? How many people out there have the cojones to step up to the plate and admit that not only to themselves, but to everyone else? I can openly admit it to them. I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. I have no fear of this, folks. I have no fear of coming to you right now and opening up my heart to you and telling you that, yes, I was guilty of it too. And I think we all were. I know many of you listening to this show would tell me that you are. If we were talking right now, many of you out there would tell me, yeah, I was guilty of identifying who I was with this movement as well. And that's also part of the problem, because once you start bringing up, you know, contrary information and contrary to the status quo that people have identified themselves with, then that starts to challenge the ego self, and that the ego self has been programmed by design by these people through the Edward Bernays School of Propaganda, through Madison Avenue and other avenues. And so what we've seen established with the Patriot community is no different. The black T-shirt that says 9/11 was an inside job, or the black T-shirt that says investigate 9/11, is no different than the sort of ego programming and associating yourself with branding in a brand name than someone who feels the need to, that they're not their whole person if they don't have, a Louis Vuitton handbag or, a pair of Nike shoes. You see? Because you're identifying yourself with a product. Who you are and what makes you feel confident in being the person that you are relates to these material goods. Edward Bernays came up with that, scientific. And so we've kind of seen this same kind of thing happen. And once people are sort of forced in a position where they have to be stripped away from identifying themselves with a movement and identifying themselves with something that they feel gave them their identity, they feel naked and lost again. And I think a lot of people are there right now. But let me tell you something. You have something new you can identify yourself with all over again, folks. If you're feeling disenfranchised from the Patriot community, identify yourself with you and identify yourself with the truth. More on the other side. This is the Global Reality on Oracle Broadcasting. Back here on the Global Reality, right here on Oracle Broadcasting, I'm your host, Josh Reeves. I want to welcome everybody to the show, and thank you so much for tuning into the broadcast and being with us today. And, I was talking about in the last segment, and I want to talk more about this, and believe me, we got a ton more news to get into in the duration of the broadcast, don't worry, but I think at times like now, and knowing that the sentiments that I'm echoing right now are not just my feelings. I'm not the only one. I'm representing myself, and I'm representing other people who I know have been disenfranchised the same way I have. Because, you can't say that you're about the truth, and you can't say that you want to know everything there is to know about the elite, about the New World Order, about all the mechanisms, and then yet come to a point where you stop and ignore connections just because they start to bring up questions about people that may be involved and about the entire alleged movement at large. And that's why, and I've been saying this for months now. This is not something I just started saying. I've been saying this for months, and it just every day it's more reaffirmed to me, more and more. And that is that movements are dangerous. They're ripe for infiltration, and they're ripe for being steered into a direction that is not always easy to see. It's not always easy for you to see what road you're being led down. And I think a lot of people are in that exact spot right now. I think leaders are dangerous as well. These are historical examples of things that we've seen. We know these are dangerous things. And that's why I've always said the empowered individual and the individual empowered with information is the most dangerous and significant threat to the power structure at large. And that's why I salute all of you guys out there, guys and gals out there that are becoming your own individual leaders. I mean, I see people every day that are breaking from the pack, and they're breaking from the pack, and they're breaking away, and they're becoming their own individual people, their own individual leaders, and they're tired of the lies. And I see a lot of other shows and a lot of other networks, not a lot, but I see some other shows, other networks that are trying to do the same thing. They're talking about the same thing. And that becomes a threat. That becomes a threat to someone who is trying to run a movement or run, something a specific way. And that's why we call Oracle Broadcasting the alternative to the alternative, because we have really emancipated ourselves from any movements, and we're strictly about the information at large. And folks, there's no doubt about it. The information that comes out on this network, on a lot of these shows here, you're not going to hear it anywhere else. And you got to ask yourself, why is it that I'm not going to hear that anywhere else? And it's because there's been a status quo established. But, you can be an individual As I was saying before the break, identify only with yourself. Don't identify who you are by some movement or some group. And I see a lot of people that identify themselves and have fallen into this box where the only thing that they identify with anymore is the 9/11 truth movement or any other movement. But what happens if that's stripped away? If you strip away that and you take that away from that person, what do they have left? A lot of them wouldn't have anything left. They'd be a shell of a person. I know a lot of people like that. Personally know some people that are like that. If you strip 9/11 truth away from these people, they wouldn't have anything left. I mean, you have to be willing to shed it all. And I first started seeing this hypocrisy probably when I first started getting involved with this, because I saw people that would talk a good game. You know, I saw people that would talk about, it's just like me, I don't own a cell phone. I won't own a cell phone, or flat refuse to own one. I know the dangers of them. I know how you're tracking control. I just flat refuse to own a cell phone. But I still pay my taxes. You know, you see, they take it out of my check anyway. But, so I mean, people you choose your battles. You know, you choose your battles. But still, I think people fall into these things where they're afraid that they might not have a personality, or they're afraid that they might not have an identity anymore if they have to be forced to be put into a position where they have to realize that, you know, Ron Paul and others are not your savior. And that there's a good chance that Ron Paul was just controlled opposition all over again. All these ties to, I mean, folks, again, like that article that Lee Rogers put in the chat room earlier. I mean, Grover Norquist speaks at his rally for the Republic. And then this article that came out in July where Grover Norquist is defending McCain. And that's the problem is you know, you see this psychological resistance. And we talk about how, you know, the psychological resistance you see in people when they're waking up to the truth. Or when you try to tell someone the truth about 9/11, and they just, it's like, you can just see the smoke coming out of their ears, you know, and their head's kind of vibrating. And it's psychological resistance. They don't want to have to accept that there's that much evil in the world. They don't want to have to accept that the government and the flag that they pledge allegiance, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. They don't want to have to accept the fact that that flag they pledge allegiance to when they were in school is now being represented by a criminal rogue government who wishes to enslave humanity and is being used as an engine for global dominance by the Central European bankers, by the Vatican, by the multinational corporations, by the military-industrial complex, and all these people, whether it be Zionists, Jesuits, or anything else, are all together at the same table colluding for the enslavement system. But there is another level of psychological resistance. You have that, we know that, but then once you're into this for a while, and you start realizing that there's a truth beyond the truth you thought was the truth, then you encounter a whole other level of psychological resistance where now the psychological resistance that you're seeing is coming from the fact that people do not want to accept the fact that they bought another lie, they accepted another box, the movement has been set up for control, for controlled opposition, and so you know, then the attacks come. Then again, the teacher becomes the threat yet again. Then the person attempting to give you information, I have no other stake in this, folks, other than anything else. I have no other stake in this other than to hopefully try to empower you with some information and break you out of this new box and this new paradigm. That's all I want to do here. And we're going to do it. And it may not be a lot of us, and we may lose a lot of friends and a lot of people that we cared about along the way. Because we can't break through their psychological conditioning. And that's something you're going to have to come to grips with real quick. Would you have to weigh what is more important? Would you rather stay in another box and never question what you've been told, even in the realm and scope of the new truth movement? Or wouldn't you rather say all bets are off and throw aside the new chains and the new shackles and say, look, I didn't get into this to be controlled again. That's what I mean. You know what? That's what I'm saying. I didn't get into this, and I didn't start researching this information, start doing a talk radio show and all this making films just to be put in another box, folks. I want to be free. And if being free means I have to question the established status quo, so be it. Back here on the Global Reality, right here on Oracle Broadcasting, I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Welcome to the day's show, folks, and I thank you so much for being with us. And we're going to get into some news and information coming up in the fourth and final hour of the show for you today. Don't forget, coming up tomorrow, big 1-year anniversary broadcast of the Global Reality right here on Oracle Broadcasting. We'll have 2 hours with you tomorrow, live and commercial-free on crystal clear Skype technology, Mr. Michael Tassarian, for 2 hours tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. 2 hours with Mr. Michael Tassarian. And we may also have some other big surprise guests pop in for you tomorrow as well. So it's going to be a great show tomorrow. I'm already psyched and excited about it. And just having Tassarian alone, 2 hours commercial-free over Skype, it's going to be great. And I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be exciting in and of itself. So, yeah, tomorrow, you definitely do not want to miss tomorrow. Play hooky, call in dead, tell them Grandma fell off the porch, something. But do not miss this show tomorrow right here on the Global Reality. And I want to finish up what I've been talking about, and I'm going to move on. I want to get into some of this more information about the Vatican, the Knights of Malta, the John Birch Society, and how it ties into the Patriot community. Until the passage of H.R. 2431 in the House of Representatives in May of 1998, the bill was introduced to the Senate as S-772 by Senator Arlen Specter, a Freemason also involved in the Warren Commission. He was the magic bullet proprietor. There it was stalled in committee until the Republican leadership, led by another Freemason, Trent Lott, maneuvered a compromise version of the bill through 33rd degree Freemason Jesse Helms and the Foreign Services Committee. Jesse Helms, who died recently, was also a high-level Council for National Policy member. On October 9th, the U.S. state, he was also tied into the Heritage Foundation, Pioneer Fund, total eugenics racist. On October 9th, the U.S. Senate passed the International Religious Freedom Act in 98, sponsored by Senators Don Nichols, Joseph Lieberman, and others by a vote of 98-0. S-1868 was referred immediately back to the House of Representatives, where it was passed into law the next day. Provisions of the International Religious Freedom Act are provided by the Library of Congress. An organization which has vehemently opposed this legislation from its inception is various groups who have looked into the Freedom of Religious Persecution Act. To his credit, C.E. Carlson has exposed many of the evangelical leaders who supported and promoted H.R. 2431 S-76. However, he claims to know nothing of the Council for National Policy, to which most of them belong. The CMP is a secret alliance of Christian ministries and elite globalists, where plans are laid to mobilize the Christian right, elect candidates, and advance legislation which will advance and establish a Christian government in the United States. That's the whole thing. That's the whole essence. That's one of the best ways I've ever heard it summed up right there. That is the goal of the John Birch Society, the phony control patriot movement, and the Council for National Policy. This is a secret alliance of Christian ministries backed by the Vatican, backed by the Christian Zionists, and elite globalists to mobilize the Christian right, which they've done effectively with the patriot community. That's why so many people believe that the patriot movement is some Christian-led movement. They elect candidates and advance legislation which will establish a Christian government in the United States. And this person, C.E. Carlson, who attempted to out them, is also a former member of the John Birch Society and a current friend of the Welch Foundation, named in honor of the founder of the JBS, Robert Welch. And this person also, claimed he was unaware of the CMP, considering that the John Birch Society was instrumental in the founding of this now 450-plus member organization of high-profile national and religious brokers. Nelson Bunker Hunt, who provided the startup money for the CMP, was also a JBS National Council member. The Birch influence on the political goals of the Council for National Policy is significant. The JBS was with CNP from the beginning. Nelson Bunker Hunt, mentioned earlier as a prime mover in CNP's founding, was on the Birch Society's National Council. By 1984, John Birch Society Chairman A. Clifford Baker and Executive Council member William Cease were CNP members. Other JBS leaders also joined the council. 5 board members of the Western Goals Foundation. The Western Goals Foundation was the precursor to the CNP. This was a McCarthy-era group, precursor to the Council for National Policy, which was essentially a John Birch Society intelligence gathering operation and later used to funnel aid to the Contras. Joined the CNP as well. John Saloma, also a member of Bunker Hunt's JBS membership. Hunt, whose Birch Society background is documented by Conway and Siegelman in Holy Terror, also made a contribution of $1 million to the moral majority in 1981. Now, Chuck Baldwin is the former head of the moral majority. Chuck Baldwin is the admitted protege of Jerry Falwell. I mean, Chuck Baldwin was on C-SPAN on the National Press Club a week ago, folks, in one breath saying he was along Ron Paul and the whole campaign, along his side on the campaign trail, and then in the same breath praising Jerry Falwell. Well, the moral majority got a $1 million donation, ladies and gentlemen, from the Hunt Oil Brothers and the John Birch Society. These Hunt Oil Brothers also funded the CNP, and they also funded the National Centre for Ethnology and Eugenics based in Edinburgh, Scotland. So do you think that you should be voting for someone who was the former leader of a group that got some money from someone who funds eugenics? Hello? McFly! Hello, McFly! My God. The JBS is famous for its promotion of anti-communist literature, and at least one former John Birch leader, Robert Morris, served on the steering committee of the Liberty Lobby, a faction of the World Anti-Communist League. Oh, my God, the World Anti-Communist League. I could get Mr. Brother Vale to get up here and preach you a sermon on the World Anti-Communist League. My goodness. If you're in the chat room, Vale, tell him. Tell him, son. My goodness. Following statement by a close advisor to Robert Welch reveals a relationship between the John Birch version of anti-communism fascism. Scenes from the post-war reemergence of the Nazi Party. Dr. J.B. Matthews, House of Un-American Activities Committee, second chief investigator, declared this in his autobiography. Americans' answer to communism will be fascism, or something so closely akin to it that the difference will not greatly matter. John Cecil, his writings were reprinted by the Contra Comitam, the official organ of the Nazi Foreign Office, and at present he is a close advisor of Robert Welch to the John Birch Society. Not unlike the JBS, we hold these truths, ascribes the ultimate responsibility for the unhappy state of the U.S. affairs to the anti-Christian one world government, liberals, communists, and the UN. The most recent newsletter states in 1998 that we hold these truths will now face the task of unmasking who controls that power structure and what is behind the totally phony, world government-oriented, anti-Christian drive to protect Christians from prosecution. That's the predominant mindset. That the New World Order and the UN and the Zionists and the Jews are the ones that because they control the banking system, control everything else, this is an agenda against Christians, and this is what they're standing up for. And this is how, folks, this is how they've sold to the masses that fighting the New World Order means replacing the goals of the people that want to kill Christians with an Old Testament rule of law, 10 Commandments version. And it doesn't matter if it's Jesuits, Zionists, Jews, it doesn't matter. They're all in it together. 100%. But folks, again, Larry Pratt called his Latin American death squads he ran under Bobby Bush and Reagan the Patriot Movement. And now you've called your movement the Patriot Movement? Wake up. Wake up. Fourth hour around the corner. Stay with us. All right, back here with you on the Global Reality on this Tuesday edition of the broadcast. Don't forget, coming up tomorrow, 1 year anniversary of the Global Reality with Mr. Michael Tsarian. And we will have him for 2 hours, and then we're going to have some other special guests for you as well. And you know what? I completely forgot that because I had these internet problems, so I didn't get on until 20 minutes late. I completely forgot that I was going to carry this this press conference today. NASA was having a press conference concerning the sun and how, there's some concerns with what the sun is doing, and I completely forgot to go to that live. They had that at 11:30 Central today, and I completely forgot. Darn it! I really wanted to carry that live for you. That's a bummer. Russian drone hit over Georgia. This is from the BBC News. Georgia says its military has shot down a Russian reconnaissance drone that was flying over Georgian territory, a claim denied by Russia. The unmanned plane was down south of the de facto border with breakaway South Ossetia, the Georgian government said, though no evidence was provided. Russia dismissed the claim as another media provocation by Georgia, and Russia recognized the independence of South Ossetia after a short war broke out over the territory last month. Russia has been withdrawing from Georgia proper under a ceasefire deal. Russian Union monitors have been deploying in Georgia to verify the Russian withdrawal and oversee the ceasefire. They are due to start patrolling October 1st. Georgia accused separatists from Abkhazia, a second breakaway region, also recognized by Moscow, of breaching a ceasefire and shooting dead a Georgian police officer on Sunday. Georgian Interior Minister spokesman Shada Yusufali said the drone was shot down on Monday near the town of Gori, some 30 kilometers, 20 miles from South Ossetia. Georgia Interior Minister spokesman Shada Yusufali said that it was flying over the territory between the villages of Kurshaveli and Teshtablonli. I can't even say these freaking Russian names. Boris Natasheville, how about that? We believe it was patrolling the territory where the Baku-Supsa oil pipeline runs. Reconnaissance flights played a role in escalating tensions between Georgia and Russia in the build of the war that broke out on August the 7th. In May, Georgia released video pictures of what it said was a Russian jet shooting down a Georgian drone over Abkhazia. Georgia said that the jet had breached its territorial integrity, which was at the stage still recognized by Russia. Russia denied its jet was involved, though UN members backed the Georgian claim. Earlier in the month, Abkhazia fighters said that they had shot down 2 Georgian drones over Abkhazia. I just read that. They repeated it twice in this article. Typos are just a bitch, aren't they? Earlier in the month, Abkhazia fighters said they had shot down, they said 3 times there. How many times are you guys going to repeat this in the same damn article here? In July, Russia, I tell you what, the mainstream media is just dropping the ball. I mean, who are these people they have that write these articles now? I mean, there are typos and freaking, repeated sentences. I mean, this stuff is just poor journalism. And again, as I was talking about earlier in the broadcast, these people probably went to and got a degree for this. Yeah, people I know that don't even have, degrees in journalism do a better job. It's a sick, sad world, man. These people get paid money to do this. The conflict in the region began when Georgia tried to retake South Ossetia by force after a series of lower-level clashes. Russia launched a counterattack on the Georgian troops and were rejected from both South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Blah, blah, frickin' blah. All right. Pakistan blames U.S. raids for hotel bombing. And Lee Rogers did some great analysis on the fraud behind that whole thing. I mean, my goodness. Give me a freaking break. You think that wasn't an inside job? Come on. This is from the London Independent. Pakistan blames U.S. raids for hotel bombing. Pakistan President Asif Ali Zardari will plead with President George W. Bush today to change a policy which is being blamed for one of his country's worst terrorist atrocities. We hope the U.S. will change policy because this is what is needed, said Pakistan's ambassador to the U.K., Walid Shamazul Hassan, after 53 people were killed and more than 250 injured in the bombing of the Marriott Hotel in Islamabad. He argued that the Bush administration's decision to follow cross-border incursions from Afghan into Pakistan, including by ground forces on at least one occasion, had been counterproductive because they are not killing high-value targets. They are killing civilians. And that's what we talked about yesterday with this new Army field manual that came out where they're talking about, that civilian populations will have to be engaged point blank in order to control the flow of resources. And I think that this Marriott Hotel bombing in Islamabad was the first opening salvo of that. I agree 100% with Lee Rogers' analysis of this. And the only thing, I don't have anything really to add to his analysis. The only thing I'm adding here is just the information I covered yesterday, and that was that, we know they've openly stated this now. So the release of this Army manual coming out, talking about that, civilian populations would be engaged in the control of the flow of resources by the United States military, is not another freaking coincidence, folks. I mean, these are released, these happen simultaneously here. Mr. Zardone's talks with President Bush in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly have been scheduled amid heightened security fears in the wake of the bombing. Yesterday, BA canceled all flights from Pakistan as a precaution, although a spokesman said that there was no direct threat against the airline, which operates 6 flights each week. A number of foreign embassies and businesses in the country are also said to be re-examining the security situation. In the northwestern city of Peshawar, Abdul Khalak Ferrari, Afghanistan's designated ambassador to Pakistan, was kidnapped and his driver killed by unidentified gunmen. Overnight on Sunday, there was further tension on the border when Pakistani troops reportedly fired shots. Well, we talked about that. But, Pakistan blames U.S. raids for hotel bombing. Now, see, I mean, it's coming out now. But see, they're still not going all the way because they're just as complicit in the bombing, just as complicit in the knowledge and the information of the attacks as our government is. But this is, again, how they come out with these phony sides and these divisionary sides. Oh, we say that the Americans' raids are responsible for the bombings, but yet they guarantee you talk to somebody in there, an upper-level ISI member, and they were probably running a joint op. This was probably, just from the information I'm looking at, I guess I don't have any, full evidence to prove it, but, if I had to venture a guess, I would say that this Marriott hotel bombing in Islamabad is no doubt 100% a joint operation between the ISI and the CIA. No doubt. I mean, at least that's what the indicators I'm getting. And at least that's what I got from the information Lee Rogers was talking about. I mean, I'm getting the idea this was a joint operation. And this is par for the course. This is what they do. Final half hour of the show around the corner. More news and information. Your phone calls at 360-350-1486. This is The Global Reality right here on Oracle Broadcast. Stay with me. Final half hour of The Global Reality right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. I want to thank everybody for tuning into the show and being with us here on the final half hour of the broadcast. We got a lot more news and information to get into on the show. So without further ado, let's get into that right now. And I'm not even going to get into it. It's hard to censor myself sometimes, folks. I got to tell you. Sometimes I see things because I just say what I want to say, man. I just don't give a damn. I just don't care. But there are plants and there are people. Man, there's just so much crazy crap going on right now. I mean, there's people. We got spies and people that are waiting to see if Oracle Broadcasting is going to say something about someone. Ooh. It's just dumb. It's just real dumb. It's back in the news right now. AFP article here today. Gates cautions against rapid U.S. buildup in Afghanistan. U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates cautioned Thursday that a rapid U.S. military expansion in Afghanistan, stressing instead the need to build up the Afghan army. A top military advisor to Gates also told lawmakers that there were practical obstacles to a rapid shift of forces from Iraq to Afghanistan, which could not be fully overcome even if a U.S. drawdown in Iraq were accelerated. General James Cartwright, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said those obstacles include a lack of support and equipment, and such as helicopters and vehicles. Gates, meanwhile, suggested that a rapid U.S. military expansion could be counterproductive in a country with a history of resistance to outsiders. And so Gates also added the U.S. forces may simply be too thinly stretched to handle the redeployment. But that's what they talked about. That's where future combat systems come into play. This is what they talked about yesterday when we got into all that information. I mean, they're stretching out the military as thinly as they possibly can by design to be able to institute a draft, which further institutes depopulation. But also at the same time as a pretext to be able to sell some of these advanced future weapon systems. That's really a big part of it as well. So no doubt there. Let's see what else we got today. I'm going to hammer a lot of news in the final two segments here today, folks. Bush administration will keep secret grim Afghanistan report quiet until after election. A secret U.S. intelligence report, which says that the political and military situation in Afghanistan is grim, will be withheld from the public until after the election, a new report says. Intelligence officials are finishing up the National Intelligence Estimate on Afghanistan, according to ABC's Brian Ross, but there are no plans to declassify any of it before the election, an official said. Keeping the intelligence report under wraps would likely help Senator John McCain. McCain is focused on what he sees as the success of the Iraq surge, in which the U.S. added troops to lessen violence. Attention to problems in Afghanistan would put the spotlight on President Bush's failures, which might rub off on the Republican presidential nominee. No, folks, they're trying to keep the fact from you that they're going over there to keep the newly reformed Taliban from wiping out the opium crop yet again. This is why they have deployed more troops to Afghanistan. They've got to secure the opium crop for the Rockefeller family and the Central European bankers just as much as they have to secure those oil pipelines. Do you understand? That's what all of this is about. Folks, if the worldwide opium now, then the opium manic bloodline will paint a picture of the situation in Afghanistan 7 years the U.S. invaded in an effort to dismantle the al-Qaeda network and its Taliban prosecutors, Ross writes. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Michael Mullen, told Congress last week that the U.S. is struggling to retain control. I'm not convinced we're winning in Afghanistan, he said, adding, we're running out of time. Absent a broader international and interagency approach to the problems there, it is my professional opinion that no amount of troops in no amount of time can ever achieve all the objectives we seek in Afghanistan, which means no amount of troops, no amount of money will ever seek the objective of fully controlling the opium trade coming out of Afghanistan in any amount of time, which means they have to have an endless station of troops in Afghanistan at all times for an indefinite amount of time until the end of time to make sure that there is an American military force in Afghanistan protecting the opium and the poppy crop permanently, folks. Permanently. Gates, folks, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Michael Mullen, folks. Absent a broader international and interagency approach to the problems there, it is my professional opinion that no amount of troops in no amount of time can ever achieve the objectives we seek in Afghanistan. So that is setting the precedent for an endless military representative force in Afghanistan to control the heroin trade. That's it. That's an open admission to it. And that's what you're going to see. There will never not be American troops or troops that represent the Rockefeller family, the UN, and the Central European banks in that area of the world anymore. This aligns with the opinions of commanders on the ground. According to a report on Tuesday's Wall Street Journal, the U.S. military expects the Taliban to launch a winter offensive, which would mean a spike in violence in an area that has, at least for the recent past, been more quiet. Now, a winter offensive, huh? Why don't you go look up when the big harvest happened? Why don't you go look when the planting season is? Why don't you look when the most productivity for the heroin and opium trade happens? Okay? Go look into that and you'll have something. I do think that there will be an increase in violence by the enemy in order to maintain a general sense of insecurity, said Brigadier General Mark Miley, Deputy Commander of the U.S. Forces in eastern Afghanistan. He told the paper that the winter fighting season this year will be more violent than in previous years. Well, I wonder why that is. That's because they're going to be, in all, cases here, trying to rapidly tear down the opium crop faster and quicker than ever. Trying to make sure that our military doesn't get their hands on it. This is what this is all about, man. It's opium wars. That's all it is. As we talked about yesterday, the control of the resources does not just mean control of oil and water and everything else. The control of resources do include the drug trade. They've got South America on lockdown. They've had South America on lockdown for a great amount of time. What they don't control is Asia and Europe and the drug trade coming out there. Once they get that, that's the New World Order. You want to know what the New World Order is? The New World Order is one system and one ruling body controlling the drug trade and the oil trade. That's it. I mean, you can get into minutia all day long, but you want to boil it down to somebody real simple. That's what it is. It's too spread out and it's too broken up. You have too many countries right now that are under the guise of the New World Order umbrella that are taking away profits from the global government. So until they get control of all of the resources, including the drug trade, if they don't get that, they don't get the New World Order. That is the bottom line. National Intelligence Director Mike McConnell said that he doesn't believe intelligence estimates should be made public, though several have recently been released, including one that detailed the U.S. intelligence community's position on Iran's nuclear program. The National Intelligence Estimate reflects the consensus view of 17 American agencies. But I love how, when it's something that fits their agenda, the National Intelligence Estimate is a true and good source and a real thing. But when it comes out and says, like it did last year around this time, that Iran won't be nuclear capable for, 10 years, well, then it's a lie, and you better listen to Mossad when they tell you, oh, they'll have it in the next year. Final segment news blitz around the corner for you right here on the Global Reality. This is Oracle Broadcasting. All right, final segment of this Tuesday in the Global Reality right here on Oracle Broadcasting. We're also being simulcast over on the Revere Radio Network at revereradio.net. So thank you to everybody listening to us over there. Tomorrow is the one-year anniversary of the Global Reality. We'll have a special one-year anniversary show for you tomorrow. 2 hours of Michael Tsarian live, commercial-free. And then we will have some other special guests as well. So we hope you all will join us tomorrow as we celebrate the one-year anniversary of the Global Reality right here on Oracle Broadcasting. We'll also have the fundraiser going on at myspace.com/Global Reality Show. That's myspace.com/Global Reality Show. So if you'd like to join us and help us get some of these films out, we would appreciate it. That is where you do it, at the MySpace. So thank you so much to all you who have supported Oracle and the shows here. And don't forget that we also are going to have the arrival of Freeman. Freeman comes to Oracle Broadcasting this Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, so stay tuned to Oracle for the times. There will probably be on Saturday night sometime before my show. So keep it locked right here to Oracle Broadcasting. Let's blow through some news here in the final segment News Blitz, folks. Aurora fifth grader in Aurora, Colorado, suspended over anti-Obama T-shirt. The father of an Aurora fifth grader said Monday he plans to sue the school after officials suspended the youth last week when he wouldn't remove a homemade T-shirt reading, "Obama, a terrorist best friend." It's the public school system, Dan Dalton said. Let's be honest, it's full of liberal loons. That's funny. So this kid a fifth grader had on a T-shirt that said, "Obama, a terrorist best friend." Well, that's all well and fine so long as the father, would be willing to let him wear a shirt that says, Bush is also a terrorist best friend. I mean, come on. I mean, he's half right, but it's the government at large, not just Obama, not just Bush. But the dad's probably a neocon, doesn't know that. But still, it doesn't really matter. It's a free speech issue. I mean, I got sent home one time. I got suspended from school or was sent home for wearing a Beavis and Butthead shirt one time when I was in high school. Remember the show Beavis and Butthead? Hey, Beavis. Yeah. Obama. Yeah, he sucks. Yeah. But I got sent home for wearing a Beavis and Butthead T-shirt because it said "butt" on it. It said, it said "butt," and every time after that, man, they would just be staring at my shirt, trying to see what it had on it. Just funny. But that was considered a bad word. That's just funny to me. But this is a free speech issue, no doubt. But it just goes to show you the mindset, and it really is reflective of the mindset in general. It's almost like the mindset of, oh, don't question 9/11 truth, or you're a COINTELPRO. Same kind of thing. Don't question don't question Black Jesus. My goodness. No, you can't question Black Jesus. If you question Black Jesus, you're probably a bad guy or a Fed. Black Jesus. There he is, folks. He's in the chat room for you. But nonetheless, you know, it really... you guys got to stop. You're going to get me... I'll be forced to do the rest of the show in the Beavis and Butthead voice, and that would just not be funny. But EPA won't remove rocket fuel from water, from CBS News. The Environmental Protection Agency has decided there is no need to rid drinking water of a toxic rocket fuel ingredient that has fouled public water supplies around the United States. Nah. Why? Why would you want to remove rocket fuel from the water, man? It's good for you. Rocket fuel and water make yummy gumdrops for children, folks. You didn't know that? Oh, yeah, it's candy, man. It's good stuff. It's healthy. I mean, rocket fuel and fluoride are like, two of the best things you can just... In fact, I have a little... You hear that? You hear that? You hear what that is? That's a can of rocket fuel and fluoride, dude. I'm ingesting it right now. You want to hear it? Oh, it's good stuff. Oh, it's good stuff, man. Straight from the nectar of the gods, I tell you. No, I mean, the EPA... The Environmental Protection Agency, huh? The EPA reached a conclusion in a draft regulatory document not yet made to the public, but reviewed on Monday by the Associated Press. The ingredient tetrachlorate has been found in at least 395 sites in 35 states. At some levels, scientists say it could interfere with thyroid function and pose developmental health risks, particularly for babies and fetuses. So what? So what? It's good. It's good for you. It's good stuff. That's what we like here. That's what we like. Jet fuel and fluoride, baby. That's kind of like, I mean, my goodness. I think we got some of that here in Dallas where I live. I tell you what, this tap water is like 80 proof, man. No kidding. I mean, this stuff is rocket fuel straight out of the tap, dude. Woo! Yeah, we got some water. You want to catch a buzz, dude? Just drink some water out of the hose. My goodness, unbelievable stuff. What else do we got here in a final couple of minutes? Russian warships set sail for maneuvers near U.S. waters. A lot of you may have heard that story by now. That's up on Blacklisted News. Punish those responsible for financial crisis, says Nicolas Sarkozy from the AFP. Those responsible for global financial crisis should be punished. And this is the guy that last year, when second one Sarkozy takes office, he's in front of the press saying that we need a UN-led New World Order and that people should go to the UN for food, water, and for knowledge. And you know what he means by going to the UN for knowledge, don't you? Going to the UN for the occult. That's what he wants you to do. Putin gives up on Bush, complicating Iran and North Korean efforts. From Bloomberg.com today. Russia is intent on mending ties with the U.S. once President George W. Bush leaves office on January 20th, prompting unprecedented interest in this year's presidential campaign. Its U.S. ambassador said in an interview. It's on Bloomberg. I'm running out of time. I don't have any time to analyze this stuff. I'm going fast. Yushchenko calls for Gazprom deal to secure gas flows. Ukraine's President Viktor Yushchenko urged the country's government to sign a contract for natural gas shipments from Russia's AO Gazprom for domestic use in 2009, a move that would ensure stability of flows to Europe. And that is a part of the consolidation and control of the Silk Road resources. U.S. dollar set to be major casualty of Hank Paulson's bailout. From the London Telegraph, this may prove to be the dollar's epochal moment, the moment historians look back at as its major turning point. And they're already saying, folks, this is it. This is the end of the dollar. And if the end of the dollar comes, that means it's going to be the merging of the dollar with the euro, and the transatlantic currency will have the Amero here, they'll have the euro. Economic Times, clients move assets worth $6 billion from Citibank to UBS to Deutsche. That's some unbelievable stuff right there, moving it all around. What else did we have? LAF officer plays down massing of 10,000 Syrian troops on the border. More fear-mongering ramping up there. Folks, I'm flat out of time. That's our show. Don't forget, coming up tomorrow, we're going to have the one-year anniversary of the Global Reality right here on Oracle Broadcasting with our guest, Michael Tassarian, and some other big guests, special guests, secret guests for you as well. And we hope you will come over here and help us celebrate the one-year anniversary of the Global Reality right here on Local Broadcasting, myspace.com/Global Reality Show and globalrealityshow@gmail.com. My name is Josh Reeves. I love each and every one of you. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow for the show. Take care. Wednesday. The commentary, but this is from last week. So why the hell would someone post this as new? I'm sorry. This came out last week. Jeez Louise. See, this is what I get. This is what happens. You see? I go try to do news gathering, and freaking some of these, and this has always happened, some of these websites, and I'm talking about mainstream news websites, will post stories on their front page that are like a week old. I mean, it's just completely ridiculous. But, of course, if we try doing that in the alternative media movement, we'd be raked over the coals, and we'd probably be called COINTELPRO for posting an article that was a week old. It's just gotten ridiculous. Yeah, I've seen a lot more attacks and a lot more stuff going on in these brain-dead follower chat boards and message boards and one. Just funny, hilarious stuff. I saw one last night that said that Josh Reeves is on air telling people that the Kabbalah is what we need to follow, and that the Kabbalah is the secret truth that we all need to look into. I love it, man. You know, because you're not doing good stuff until people start attacking you. And it was funny because they went on to say, here's what you need to look into, and it was all about Babylon and Alice Bailey and pretty much everything I've covered over the past few weeks. I was sitting here going, oh wow, that's pretty good stuff, because you know that's the bottom line. If you're not over the target and you're not doing good stuff, no one would even bother talking about you at all. I mean, I spent almost a whole year on the air here, without anyone ever saying anything about me whatsoever. Now, they're coming after this network. They're coming after various shows. So that's it's just funny to see that kind of stuff out there, because it's just completely baseless and right. Oh, and the other one was calling us all Marxist and saying that we blame the New World Order on Christians, and we leave out the Vatican connections and all this stuff. And we've talked about it here on this show a zillion times, almost to the point of beating the horse until it was completely, dog meat. Talk about beating a dead horse. We beat this dead horse until it was dog meat. Folks, I mean, how many times have I told you? Zionists, Jesuits, doesn't matter. They're all in it together, and we expose them all. If somebody's a Jesuit, I'll call him a Jesuit. If somebody's a Zionist, I'll call him a Zionist. Doesn't matter. So it's pretty interesting to me, and I've seen a lot of these chat boards that I'm talking about, and I'm not going to tell you what message boards these are, but just because I don't want anybody going over there and starting some stuff. But I will. Broadcasting Network, I am your host, Josh Reeves, 20 minutes late to the broadcast today, as we had no internet connection up until just a few minutes ago, but we are back up and running here. I tell you what, I felt like I was having one of those, where they show, like, in the war in Iraq, and they go and they, anytime there's a standoff, they cut off their water and they cut off their communication. I was waiting for for them to start blasting New Kids on the Block with big speakers or something outside of my. Come out, we know you're in there. Come out, Mr. Reeves, or something. I didn't know what the hell was going on, because our water was not working, and there was no electricity, and then all this. I mean, there's no internet, no water. Then all of a sudden everything started working. Don't ask me, man. I just work here. So we're here. And we are live, and we hope that you guys are thank you so much for being patient with us. And we'll hope to let everybody know that we're here. I guess that what we'll try to do is we'll try to have some semblance of a show, because I had no internet connection to do any sort of show prep today. So I have very little prepared. I have a few stories already. So what I'll have to do is I'll go through some various stories, and then I'll just have to do news gathering between the breaks. So this is going to be a fly by the seat of your pants 4-hour broadcast today. There's no telling what we'll talk about, where we'll go, or anything else. So stay tuned here today, ladies and gentlemen, because I think it's going to be an exciting show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We do have wide open phone lines for you today at 360-350-1486. And last night, those of you that listen late nights may have listened to Doug and Michael Vell last night, the Intel Strike Report, and they had some technical issues last night with, I don't know, it was just weird stuff happening. not really on our end. It was just some strange things that happened. Hard to say what it was. I at first had thought, it had something to do with that because it was completely unrelated. But that is how it goes, I guess. And nothing ever runs 100% all of the time. But let's get into some news right now in this segment of the show. China calls for financial New World Order. From Reuters, China paper urges new currency order after financial tsunami. From Reuters, threatened by a financial tsunami. The world must consider building a financial order no longer independent and dependent on the United States. A leading Chinese state newspaper said on Wednesday this. I will say that I've seen at least 6 people in our chat board over the past week, in our chat room over the past week, say, "Hey, has anybody else had any problems with these forums?" You go over there and you don't even say anything that's adversarial or anything negative about anybody at all, and you get banned. So that's how it goes. New World Order for Learning from the Pretoria News today. This one's up on rogovernment.com right now. A fundamental rethinking of how universities should function in the 21st century is underway. Traditional elite universities, all located in the north, are opening branches and establishing joint programs with universities in the south. China, India, countries in the Persian Gulf, and other Asian states are investing billions of dollars in the creation of intellectual centers. Outdated curricula are being revamped, scholars are being encouraged to think outside their disciplines and invest in emerging fields of inquiry. Radically new international learning experiences are being offered to staff and students with the ideas of podcasts, blogs, live chats, webcams, wikis, and online courses. In seminars, digital technologies are revolutionizing traditions of study and research. So basically what they've done here, this is interesting. Very interesting to me because they've pretty much, sounds like they've pretty much taken the tactics that we've used to educate ourselves on the information that, you can't go get at a university. This information that we all get involved with and that we have all chosen to educate ourselves with on our own can't and will not be taught in the microcosm of a college classroom. But see, think about that. The use of videos, podcasts, blogs, live chats, webcams, wikis, and online courses and seminars, digital technology, revolution traditions of study and research. And, that's you're starting to see that be the status quo. Because, folks, they figured out, and if you don't think that they know everything about information acquisition that you and I know, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. I mean, Microsoft didn't start partnering with the NSA in the late 1990s to put backdoors in everything from their Windows Millennia Edition, ME, I think that was what it was, and Windows 2000. That was when they first started putting in the NSA backdoors. And, of course, with the arrival of XP, XP was the one that first gave them a whole lot of power as far as being able to get in and track and trace you all the way across the board. Now, of course, with Vista, that thing's just a big piece of spyware as far as I'm concerned. But on the other side, we're going to do a whole lot more news as well. Your phone calls at 360-350-1486. Monday and Tuesday, rather. Golly, I don't know what day it is anymore. Tuesday edition of the Global Reality right here in Oracle. Stay with us. I'll be back here with you on the Global Reality on this Tuesday edition of the broadcast. My name is Josh Reeves. I'm your host. I want to thank you for tuning in to the broadcast today. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about eventually here in the broadcast as I do my frantic news gathering between the breaks here. But there is a lot of news, and there's a lot of stuff to get into and talk about today. So don't you worry. We will have a good show for you today on the broadcast. Wide open phone lines right now at 360-350-1486. Again, that number is 360-350-1486. Don't forget, coming up tomorrow, big show, big broadcast for you tomorrow. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to have any connection problems tomorrow. Otherwise, somebody's going to have somebody's head. I tell you, I got to come up with a contingency plan for tomorrow. Borrow a phone or something, because tomorrow we got a big broadcast lined up for you, and it's going to be a good show. We're going to have Michael Tsarian in the first 2 hours of the broadcast tomorrow. 1 year anniversary of the Global Reality tomorrow, the 24th. Celebrating 1 year of being on the air and broadcasting this show out across the airwaves. And so we're going to have, we're going to try to have a greatest hits collection of the best, some of the best guests and people we've had up on the show. So for the first 2 hours tomorrow, we're going to have Mr. Michael Tsarian here with us. And it's going to be a special treat for you because our technical guru here, Aaron, at at Oracle Broadcasting. He's really one of the unsung heroes of this network, no doubt about it. The guy's an absolute amazing guy, and we're fighting for him and his family as well when we do this because you know, the guy's awesome. But he set the code for the network here for my show tomorrow to run for the first 2 hours. We have Mr. Michael Desarian on with us. that 2 hours with Desarian will be 100% commercial free, and that's something we've done twice. We did that back when we were on TrueNet Radio when we had Michael Desarian on twice. We ran we ran a whole I think we ran a whole 3 hours with him commercial free once, but that's something we've always done with him. And also he's going to be with us on Skype. So he won't be with us on a phone. Michael Desarian will be with us on the same technology I'm using right now to talk to you. So it will sound as if we're in the same room together, and it'll be 100% commercial free, and that's awesome. We were scheduled to have Chris Everard as well. I don't know if we're going to have Chris Everard for sure or not yet. There is a possibility we could still have him. I'm going to try to call his residence in the south of France today when I get off of the show and try to see if I can get a hold of him. Because, again, we had him booked, but his booking agent that he was with is no longer with him, so there was some sort of confusion there. But we may have him up tomorrow. I don't know. It'll just be a surprise if we do. And we may have some other surprise guests pop in as well. So big show coming up tomorrow on the 1 year anniversary of the Global Reality. And before the break, I want to go back into what I was talking about here. It'll be fun. Go back to my article. Where did I leave off? Let's see. Hopefully I can find where I left off at. Oh, here we go. Wait. No, that's not it either. Let's see here. Well, I guess I'll just have to pick a different news story because I'm not finding the news story I was talking about before the break. I hate when that happens. You get so much going on that you can't find out where you left off. Very interesting. All right. Well, I'll just have to pick another story then, won't I? Let's see. Well, there's a ton of them today. Oh, there we go. New World Order for Learning. That's where I left off before the break. Yeah, and this is, it seems as if, they're starting to figure out that people no longer really have to go to some, government training camp or to some, college where they're paying out the nose to still be kept in a box and be conditioned. What was that? You ever seen that movie? You ever seen that movie Good Will Hunting before with Matt Damon? You ever seen that movie? There's a quote in there. There's a line in there where this guy's like, like reciting Chomsky like he's cool. It's like just because you memorize Chomsky, you think you're cool. Of course, Chomsky's an MIT shill. But he says something like, you're going to wake up 30 years from now and realize that you blew, $500,000 on an education you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library. That's kind of that's kind of the truth, I mean, you don't have to go. You can educate yourself, folks, and know more than most of your. I mean, most of the people I know that are awake are more educated than the people who went and spent 8 years in a college somewhere. Literally, I mean, just because you go and pay for a degree somewhere does not necessarily mean you know anything about the world history